Chapter 900. It's Uncle. Uncle is back. Zhao loosened her tightly clenched lips and shed tears of joy. Lu Yen looked at the sky in a daze. When she saw Ning Fan's figure, she immediately felt relieved. Senior is back. The long street of the heavenly barbarian city was filled with barbarians. All of them were extremely excited. When they were being chased by the sixth-generation barbaric ancestor and were on the verge of despair, Ning Fan returned. Ning Fan had returned with an army of 200,000 savage beasts. The roars of the 200,000 wild beasts were as loud as thunder. Ning Fan stepped on the space-piercing stone beneath his feet and immediately leaped up, flying straight towards Fan Lianxiu. Fan Lianxiu, who was initially extremely arrogant, actually fled in panic. This scene was witnessed by all living beings, and no one wasn't shocked. In the sky, the cultivators who were fighting against Fan Lianxiu exclaimed, "Who is this ghost-masked cultivator? He actually brought 200,000 savage beasts to this place. Could he be a powerful expert of the demon race?" "No, he's not a demon cultivator. He's a human cultivator. I didn't expect that there would be a senior who could command savage beasts in our human race. Moreover, there are actually hundreds of thousands of savage beasts under his command. Why did that ferocious beast run away? Could it be that it's afraid of this ghost-masked senior?" Exclamations of shock could be heard everywhere. Teng Nan and Teng Bei's eyes were filled with shock, but they did not say anything. They just quietly watched the scene of Ning Fan and Fan Lianxiu running away. Both of them were at the thought fragmentation realm, but they could not hurt Fan Lianxiu at all. They wondered what kind of cultivation base this person has to be to actually scare Fan Lianxiu away. Could this person be an ancient immortal venerable? No, it's obviously not. The chi that this person exudes is far from the thought fragmentation realm. Both of their eyes were filled with confusion. However, those confusion turned into shock the moment Ning Fan made his move. Freeze. Ning Fan's speed was too fast. In just a flash, a golden light pierced through the sky and appeared 1,000 zhang away from Fan Lianxiu. He pressed his index finger forward and all the void storms within 1,000 zhang were immediately frozen. The space seemed to be frozen and time seemed to have stopped. Fan Lianxiu's expression suddenly changed as he was unable to move. He was actually frozen by Ning Fan's finger. The Eastern Sky Ancestor Emperor's Heaven Sealing Technique. Where did this person come from? He actually knows this technique. Teng Nan and Teng Bei were both shocked. Any cultivator who had the slightest bit of insight and recognized the heaven sealing art would be greatly alarmed. As soon as he pointed at Fan Lianxiu, he suddenly raised his hand. His eyes were filled with fear just now. But now it has changed. The 5 rain swords can't hurt him. I'm afraid even if I summon the 5 Sword of War and use all 10 of them at the same time, they still won't be able to hurt him. This ferocious being's ability is really strange. It can ignore the damage of Tao laws. No wonder even 100,000 cultivators couldn't take him down in the past. I wonder if I can hurt him with this ability. Ning Fan's scarlet eyes suddenly turned purple. His silver hair turned black and his white robe turned black. His ghost face turned black bit by bit. At the moment when his face turned black, he suddenly raised his finger and pointed at the 10,000 flaming bulls. Then he uttered 2 cold and emotionless words. Shagu. Ever since Ning Fan returned, Fairy Han Wu's beautiful eyes had always been fixed on him. She was the one who was the closest to Ning Fan among the group of women. The moment Ning Fan turned into black robes, she clearly saw his eyes turn as cold as ice. That kind of coldness made her feel as if he had completely turned into a stranger. It was so unfamiliar that she did not dare to recognize him. If she did not see Ning Fan turn from white to black with her own eyes, she would almost think that the black-robed Ning Fan was another person. Mo Yuanzi and old ancestor Jin Hua arrived late with a group of cultivators who were in distress. As soon as they arrived, they saw the scene of Ning Fan turning into black robes. Both of them were filled with fear. Old ancestor Jin Hua, in particular, had the most fear on his face. He had been injured by the black-robed Ning Fan before. Thus, he knew very well how terrifying Ning Fan's ability was in this state. With just a finger, He could even erase a cultivator's cultivation base. This is the returning ruined finger. The returning ruined finger of the Fu Li clan. How can this little thief display this technique? Immortal concubine Zhang Yu did not say a word, but her heart was filled with astonishment. The Fu Li clan had long been destroyed in the ancient times. In this world, there were very few cultivators who were qualified to know the name of the Fu Li clan. As for those who could recognize the returning ruined finger, there were even fewer of them. As for those who could display the returning ruined finger, they should have all died. The Fu Li clan should have all died. Could it be that this little thief possesses the bloodline of the Fu Li clan? Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to display the returning ruined finger. In the dictionary of the Fu Li clan, the two words shagu meant returning ruin. The ability that Ning Fan was displaying now was also what immortal concubine Zhang Yu thought of as the returning ruined finger. Ning Fan had comprehended this technique from the black-robed elderly man. His understanding of this technique was extremely shallow. Even so, the power of this technique should not be underestimated. The returning ruined finger was to return everything in the world to nothingness. The power of this technique was the opposite of the great Tao. Suddenly, billowing black mist appeared in front of the herd of 10,000 bulls. When the black mist rolled towards the herd of bulls, the flames on their bodies were immediately extinguished. In one breath, the flames were extinguished. In 3 breaths, all the barbaric bulls wailed miserably. Their bodies began to rot. In 6 breaths, all the barbaric bulls' skin and flesh had decayed and fell off, leaving only their skeletons. In 10 breaths, the herd of bulls, including their skeletons, turned into ashes and vanished in the void space. In 10 breaths, the technique was broken. 10 breaths was also the limit of Ning Fan's current returning ruined finger. He pointed his index finger at Fan Lianxiu again. Countless black mist rolled towards him. Being engulfed by the black mist, Fan Lianxiu's cultivation base actually showed signs of falling. In 1 breath, his cultivation base fell for 1,000 years. In 10 breaths, he fell for 10,000 years. His blood-soul body was being destroyed bit by bit in the black mist. In just 10 breaths, his cultivation base immediately recovered to its original state. His body also recovered. What a strange ability! Fortunately, this young man didn't comprehend this technique. Otherwise, he would certainly be able to injure my blood-soul body. I didn't expect that this young man has 4 types of power that can injure me instead of 3. No, judging from this young man's strangeness, there might be a 5th and a 6th type. I might not be able to kill this young man even if I continue to fight him. It's better for me to run away. Fan Lianxiu's expression changed again. With a sway of his body, he turned into a ray of blood-red light and ran away. Ning Fan's eyes flashed. He chased after Fan Lianxiu while his mind was filled with thoughts. When this ferocious creature first saw me, it immediately ran away. It must be because I have something that he is deeply afraid of. Later on, he stopped running because he saw that I didn't reveal any means that he was afraid of. He knew that I didn't see through the weakness of his blood-soul body. That's why he wanted to kill me before I realized it. With my current understanding of the returning void finger, I can't injure this ferocious creature, but I must have some means that this ferocious creature is extremely afraid of. With Ning Fan's intelligence, he immediately deduced this point from Fan Lianxiu's various actions. The 5 rain swords wasn't just his strongest ability. Among the 5 swords, there was also the separation and reunion sword, which was a 12 nirvana acquired magical treasure. If this technique couldn't injure Fan Lianxiu, it meant that ordinary divine abilities and magical treasures wouldn't be able to hurt him. Among the many means that I have, which one is the one that Fan Lianxiu is most afraid of? Suddenly, Ning Fan's mind recalled a verse of the barbarian ancestor scripture that he often heard when he was transforming into a mortal and comprehending the truth. Barbarian is the ancestor of nature, the great sect of myriad domains. Barbarian is born in the mortal world and dies in the tribulation. Everything can't be clung to. Perhaps this person is afraid of my tribulation blood, or perhaps he's afraid of my Tao of obsession. Ning Fan's figure flashed once again and appeared in front of Fan Lianxiu, blocking his path. This time, it wasn't the Tribulation Sense technique but the Dao Sense technique. As soon as he pointed his finger, the west wind appeared. Immediately, the strange scene of thousands of leaves fluttering in the air appeared between heaven and earth. Humph! This brat is really stupid. He actually hasn't discovered what I'm afraid of. It's just a Dao Sense technique. Why would I be afraid of it? Fan Lianxiu sneered. Without the slightest fear of the thousands of leaves in front of him, he directly dashed forward, attempting to break the seal of the technique. However, as soon as he entered the range of the technique, the west wind enveloped him. Fan Lianxiu's expression immediately changed and cold sweat flowed all over his body. The west wind technique was a Dao Sense technique that Ning Fan had created. It contained his Dao sense of obsession. Even Fan Lianxiu himself did not expect that under the corrosion of the Dao sense of obsession, his blood-soul body would crumble along with the shadows of the thousands of leaves, turning into ashes bit by bit. The fifth type. This brat actually has a fifth type of force that could injure me. Obsession. Damn it. This man is actually a obsession cultivator. It's actually a obsession cultivator that only 1 out of 1,000,000 people in the Jieling clan possesses. Damn it. Damn it. The destructive power of obsession to savage beasts is much more terrifying than the blood of the beast. Ancient statue, protect me. The west wind was like the Dao. Almost in the blink of an eye, it was going to kill Fan Lianxiu on the spot. At the moment of certain death, Fan Lianxiu shouted loudly and summoned an ancient statue from the depths of the void. That ancient statue was one of the 7 ancient statues that Ao Xian, an old ancestor poisonous dragon, used during the blood sacrifice ceremony in the desolate land. As soon as the ancient statue appeared, Fan Lianxiu's blood-soul body directly entered the ancient statue and possessed it. All of a sudden, an aura force that was comparable to an ancient immortal venerable was awakening on the ancient statue. With the power of the West Wind technique, it could no longer hurt Fan Lianxiu, who was inside the ancient statue. Once the blood soul enters the ancient statue, it can't be separated anymore. Initially, I planned to devour enough flesh and blood to improve my blood soul's cultivation base before merging with the ancient statue. Now, it seems like I have no choice but to merge with the ancient statue in advance. However, even if I successfully resurrect after 6 days, my strength will certainly be much weaker than before. It's all this brat's fault. He forced me to hide in the ancient statue. This brat deserves to die. Billions of barbarian souls appear. The ancient statue was like an incomparably huge stone puppet. Step by step, it slowly and firmly walked towards Ning Fan in the void. Fan Lianxiu was not going to run anymore. He wanted him to pay the price. With a point of his finger, a huge pool of blood appeared in the air. Bloody souls flew out from the pool of blood. Each of these souls belonged to the barbarians who had died unjustly in the blood sacrifice ceremony in the wildlands countless years ago. As soon as those souls appeared, each of them glared at Fan Lianxiu with unforgettable hatred. It was unknown how many souls there were. 1 billion, 10 billion, 100 billion, or even more, uncountable. In the past, the 6th barbarian ancestor Fan Lianxiu disdained to sacrifice all the living beings in the desolate land in exchange for a chance to cultivate the tribulation blood and become the tribulation spirit of Tai Tsung. The barbarians did not enter samsara after they died. Before their souls dissipated, they were all taken away by Fan Lianxiu and refined into the blood pool. Each of the dead barbarians had an unforgettable hatred towards Fan Lianxiu. That hatred turned into endless joss flames of slaughter and accumulated in the blood pool for countless years. It was obviously the joss flames of slaughter that were used to kill Fan Lianxiu. However, for some reason, Fan Lianxiu could use them instead. This simply defied common sense. I don't need your faith. I only need hatred. The more you hate me, the better. My Tao is hatred. In this world, only cultivators who cultivate the Tao of hatred can use the joss flames of slaughter at will. And I am one of them. Blood Bao Spirit, appear. Barbaric Slaughter Arrow, condense. The ancient statue sneered and grabbed forward with its stone hand. Immediately, a young archer appeared between heaven and earth. The young archer's eyes were cold and emotionless. With a shake of his body, he turned into a blood bow and fell into the ancient statue's hand. The ancient statue grabbed at the blood pool with its huge hand. The endless joss flames of slaughter immediately turned into a blood arrow and fell into the ancient statue's hand. His left hand drew the bow and his right hand released the arrow. As soon as the bowstring was released, the entire world seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. He wanted to use this arrow to kill Ningfan and eliminate the hatred in his heart. Now that his blood soul had possessed the ancient statue, his strength was close to that of an ancient immortal venerable. With this joss flames of slaughter arrow, he could kill any cultivator below the immortal venerable realm. This was an attack from an ancient immortal venerable. He firmly believed that no one in this world could withstand it. He recklessly collected the hatred of the people and ignored their anger. He did not need their faith. In the blood pool, the remnant souls of the barbarians who had been dead for many years could not bear to look at Ningfan. They were unwilling to accept this. They hated Fan Lianxiu and their hatred had turned into the joss flames of slaughter. They only hoped that one day, someone would take away the joss flames of slaughter and kill Fan Lianxiu. However, what made them sad was that even the joss flames of slaughter that were born from their hatred had become a tool that Fan Lianxiu used to display his abilities. Is this the sorrow of the weak? At the moment when the ancient statue drew the bow and nocked the arrow, countless living beings in this world instantly felt a sense of impending doom. That arrow was clearly aimed at Ningfan, but its attack range included all the living beings in this world. The higher the cultivation base of a person, the stronger the sense of danger they felt. They would die. They would die. They would die. Mo Yuanzi and old ancestor Jin Hua were filled with remorse and hatred. They had never thought that the outcome of following Ningfan to this place was to be killed by an arrow from a peerless, ferocious creature. If they had known this earlier, they would certainly not have followed Ningfan to this place. It was already too late for them to escape now. Both Earth Devil and Taoist Iron Crow wore unwilling expressions. The reason why they lowered their status and became Ningfan's slaves was to save their own lives. How could they be willing to die? However, the destructive power of the ancient statue's arrow was too strong. Perhaps only the two of them could withstand it with their immortal venerables' cultivation bases when they were at their peak. Now, if they are hit by the arrow, they would certainly die. Immortal concubine Zhang Yu was so anxious that she almost cried. She was not afraid of the arrow. If she is hit by it, she might be the only one in this place who would not die. When she was at her peak, she was a 9-tribulation immortal emperor after all. No matter how weak her broken spirit was, it would still be very difficult to kill her. Even if she is hit by the arrow, she would at most suffer more serious injuries. Her life would not be in danger. However, she was afraid that Ningfan would be shot to death. She had been struck by Ningfan's tribulation restriction, right? If Ningfan dies, the tribulation restriction would kill her as well, right? The only thing that could kill her in this place was that damned tribulation restriction, right? I'm going all out. Even if I have to use the last of my broken spirit's power, I must protect this little thief's life. Immortal concubine Zhang Yu gritted her teeth. Without saying a word, she wanted to fly out and protect Ningfan with her life. Unfortunately, before she could do anything, a giggling little lowly appeared in a flash. Silver lightning crackled around her body and blocked Ningfan's path. She was the primordial spirit of immortal lowly who ran out of the lightning-capturing banner after eating and drinking to her heart's content. Currently, the golden color of immortal lowly's primordial spirit had completely disappeared. No one could tell that it was the primordial spirit of an immortal emperor. Unless she was willing to. After eating and drinking to her heart's content in the lightning-capturing banner, immortal lowly still had not recovered her memories nor completed the evolution of her lightning body. However, her chi had already skyrocketed to the early thought fragmentation realm. Even though she was just at the early thought fragmentation realm, her aura made her fearless even when facing the current ancient statue. Father, don't be afraid. Xian Xian will protect you. No one is allowed to hurt my father. Chapter 901. The ancient statue held a blood bow in his hand. The slaughter blood arrow on the bowstring was glaring, and the arrow was burning with a bloody fire. As soon as the arrow left the bowstring, the entire world was torn apart bit by bit. It was almost split into two under the power of this arrow. When the arrow approached him, Ning Fan seemed to have an illusion. It was as if he could sense the undying hatred of the billions of barbarian souls in the blood pool. This arrow was condensed from Joss flames of slaughter, drawn with a blood bow, and shot out with the full strength of an ancient statue. Its might was so formidable that it was sufficient to annihilate any living being beneath the immortal Exalt realm. We can't block it. However, we can't retreat. Ning Fan was clad in black robes. His eyes were always cold and emotionless. It was as if nothing could affect him once he turned into black robes, not even the arrow. Behind him, there were tens of thousands of human cultivators, as well as the creatures of heavenly barbarian city. If he retreated, this arrow would immediately kill everyone. I can't retreat. The enemy's strength was close to that of an ancient celestial venerable. Although he was already a powerhouse after cultivating for so long, there was still a huge gap between him and the celestial venerable level. Comparing the two, the opponent was like a huge tree, and he was like an ant under the tree. Wanting to shake the tree with the strength of an ant was difficult. But even an ant would have the wrath of an ant. Moreover, it wasn't that this arrow didn't have any weaknesses. Its power was all concentrated on the Joss flames of slaughter, and its weakness was also the Joss flames of slaughter. At the moment when the blood slaughter arrow was about to hit him, his innate ghost face was slightly trembling with excitement. That kind of excitement was like a hungry wolf that had seen its prey. That kind of excitement was like the innate ghost face, which was born to restrain the killing Joss flames. Ning Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. When he felt the trembling of the innate ghost mask, he suddenly had a strange thought. It wanted to rush towards the blood arrow, grab it, crush it, and devour it. Without waiting for Ning Fan to understand the origin of this feeling, a lightning suddenly flew out from the storage pouch. It was the immortal Loli who came out from the lightning-capturing banner. The celestial Loli here only had her primordial spirit. The primordial spirit's power transformed her body, but she still had a short and cute appearance. That adorable face of hers was still smiling foolishly at first, but when she saw that the ancient statue was audacious enough to shoot an arrow at Ning Fan, she was instantly enraged. Who was Ning Fan? That was her father. This ancient statue was really bold, actually daring to shoot her father with an arrow. Too abominable. Father, don't be afraid. Xian Xian will protect you. No one is allowed to hurt my father. Once again, she stood in front of Ning Fan. Her small hands seemed to be forming hand seals randomly, but they immediately activated the lightning power and formed a divine ability. The arrow was extremely fast, but Immortal Loli's technique was even faster. In a split second, an incomparably huge silver lightning diagram appeared in the air. Cold chi soared into the sky from the center of the lightning diagram. A lightning war chariot emitting surging cold mist suddenly appeared. Once the lightning chariot appeared, millions of frost lightning runes began to revolve around it. The lightning cannons on the carriage surged with power. With a loud boom, a dark lightning cannon shot out, piercing through the sky. There were 9 lightning runes on the lightning cannon. This thunder chariot was the dark thunder chariot summoned by the Extreme Thunder Palace's secret technique. In the past, the immortal Loli could only summon a level 8 lightning chariot. Using a level 9 lightning chariot was too much for her. However, now that her strength had increased significantly, it was much easier for her to use it. An 8th grade lightning chariot could kill most of the old monsters at the void-shedding realm. A 9th grade lightning chariot's destructive power was infinitely close to that of an immortal venerable. There were not many old monsters at the thought fragmentation realm who could withstand the destructive power of this cannon. Wherever the lightning cannon shot passed through, heaven and earth were immediately frozen. The blood arrow was originally coming at an extremely fast speed. However, as soon as it was hit by the lightning cannon, Its entire body began to freeze bit by bit. The slaughterjoss flames inside the arrow also slowed down. 40% of its power was directly frozen. The first cannon shot failed to stop the blood arrow, but it managed to weaken its power by 40%. Immortal Loli raised her small hand. Rumbling lightning power formed a divine ability. The Dark Thunder Chariot did not stop at all and fired the second cannon shot. After the second cannon shot passed through the arrow, the power of the blood arrow was reduced by 40% again, leaving only 20%. At this critical moment, the third cannon shot arrived. The third cannon shot directly shattered the blood arrow, turning it into specks of slaughterjoss flames that filled the air and gradually dissipated. After 3 consecutive shots, the immortal Loli directly blocked the blood arrow that was close to the power of an immortal prime. This scene shocked countless people. Countless exclamations came from the crowd of cultivators. When the immortal Loli's figure landed in everyone's eyes, she immediately became a senior expert. Early thought shattering. There's no mistaking it. This senior has the energy of the early thought demolishing stage. Strange. Under the suppression of the forbidden immortal force, there's actually someone who can maintain the cultivation of the thought-fragmenting realm. That's the Dark Thunder War Chariot, the secret art of the Eastern Extreme Thunder Palace. This senior is undoubtedly a cultivator of the Extreme Thunder Palace. The might of 3 cannons blocked the attack of an immortal venerate. This senior's lightning war chariot is definitely a grade 9 war chariot. The might of a 9th grade war chariot is truly terrifying. It is said that there are only a few 9th grade war chariots in the entire Supreme Thunder Palace. Even Mounz, Patriarch Jinong, Ting Nan, and Teng Bei felt their scalps tingle after witnessing the might of the Class 9 war chariot with their own eyes. The most inconceivable thing was the way Immortal Loli addressed Ning Fan. "Daddy," an old monster who could activate a 9th grade lightning war chariot and block the attack of an immortal venerate actually called Ning Fan Daddy. What kind of person could have such a violent daughter? Could it be that Ning Fan is an ancient immortal venerate? Fellow Taoist Zhao Jian. Could he be an ancient immortal venerate? Mounz and old ancestor Jinhua exchanged glances with each other. Both of their hearts were beating wildly. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that it was likely to be true. Immortal concubine Zhang Yu's beautiful eyes flickered with astonishment, dispelling the thought of saving Ning Fan. With Immortal Loli's help, Ning Fan would not be in much danger. Fan Lianxiu was inwardly shocked when the blood arrow was broken. He really did not dare to underestimate the might of a 9th grade lightning war chariot. His heart began to race again. He thought to himself that Ning Fan was indeed his nemesis. Before he merged with the ancient statue, he was not a match for Ning Fan. Thus, he could only run away. Now that he had merged with the ancient statue, he had gained an extremely violent daughter who could even block the attack of an immortal venerate. In that case, even if he continues to stay here and fight Ning Fan, it would be difficult for him to kill Ning Fan. Troublesome. This is really troublesome. Even though I have merged with the ancient statue, the power of the ancient statue is not inexhaustible. It seems like it won't be easy to kill this brat. Forget it. Let's leave this place for now. Once we find the ancient statues and blood souls of the other barbaric ancestors, we can join forces and seek revenge on this brat. Fan Lianxiu made up his mind. He immediately controlled the ancient statue and made a grabbing motion. Countless amounts of joss flames of slaughter were drawn out from the blood pool. He condensed them into arrows and shot them out. Then he stepped on the sky and left with huge strides, bringing the blood pool with him. Every step he took covered an immeasurable distance. I won't let you run away. Immortal Loli activated the Dark Lightning War Chariot again and fired 3 shots consecutively, destroying the second blood arrow. With a tap of her feet, she directly stood on the chariot. She drove the chariot with a slight smile on her face and chased after the ancient statue. Streaks of lightning cannon fire blocked the path of retreat of the ancient statue. Fan Lianxiu was so angry that he laughed instead and stopped running away. Like father, like daughter. Ning Fan pursued me relentlessly, and now his daughter also dares to pursue me relentlessly. Does she really think that I, the sixth-generation barbaric ancestor, am a herbivore? Since they didn't want him to leave, he wouldn't escape. He wanted to stay here and fight it out with the immortal lowly. He wanted to see if his ancient stone statue was stronger, or if the immortal lowly's war chariot was stronger. Aren't you going to run away? If you aren't going to run away, I'm going to use my ultimate technique. Unseal, 10th grade lightning chariot. Immortal Lowly's voice was very soft. However, as soon as her voice fell, the scene of tens of thousands of lightning rumbling appeared between heaven and earth. Her voice, amidst the rumbling thunder, was transmitted into everyone's ears exceptionally clearly. She stood on the lightning chariot, and the lightning diagram covered the entire void. The direction where the lightning struck was actually moved according to her will. It was as if she had become the Lord of Lightning in this place. Her small face was filled with pain. She gritted her teeth. More and more runes appeared on the dark lightning chariot. The 10th lightning mark appeared beside the 9 lightning marks on the lightning cannon. However, summoning the 10th grade lightning chariot was obviously too much for Immortal Lowly. Only half of the 10th lightning mark had appeared, and it could not be condensed anymore. As for Immortal Lowly, her face was already slightly pale. What? This lady can actually summon a 10th grade chariot? This can't be real, right? It said that a 10th grade chariot can kill an immortal venerable and severely injure an immortal king with a single blast. Isn't it said that only the past extreme lightning palace lords could condense a 10th grade lightning chariot? How can this lady do it? It's not a real 10th grade lightning chariot. However, its power is incomparable to any 9th grade lightning chariot. The crowd of cultivators exclaimed in surprise. Amidst the exclamation, the Immortal Lowly suddenly turned her head and smiled sweetly at Ning Fan. Even though it was a pity that she could not summon a real 10th grade lightning chariot in one go, it should be enough to deal with the ancient statue. Father, Xian will protect you well because you are my father. Immortal Lowly endured the pain in her chest and the incomparably huge burden to activate the dark lightning chariot. Once again, she fired the cannon at the ancient statue. Even though the current dark lightning chariot was not a real 10th grade chariot, its power was enough to severely injure an ancient immortal venerable whose cultivation base was slightly weaker. Just as Fan Lianxiu was about to retaliate against Immortal Lowly, his expression suddenly changed. Without saying a word, he activated the body of the ancient statue and turned around to flee. He fled extremely quickly, but the lightning cannon's attack was even faster. It even triggered the response of the lightning in heaven and earth. Fan Lianxiu felt like he was hallucinating. Every single lightning in this world was the cannon fire of Immortal Lowly's lightning cannon. This world was filled with lightning. There was no way for him to avoid it. This ancient statue's strength was originally close to that of an ancient immortal venerable. However, the moment the lightning cannon struck it, its stone body was immediately frozen. What was the so-called dark lightning? It was the coldest lightning in the world. It could freeze and kill everything. Fan Lianxiu's ancient stone body shattered inch by inch in the ice, revealing the bloody soul underneath. The bloody soul glared at Immortal Lowly with hatred. It actually ignored the power of the lightning cannon and fled. His ancient stone body could not withstand a single attack from Immortal Lowly. However, his bloody soul was not afraid of any of her lightning abilities. Countless cultivators sucked in a cold breath at this moment. They could not imagine that an ancient statue whose strength was close to that of an ancient immortal venerable would be destroyed by the lightning cannon of the war chariot. Why is there an old man with a bloody soul hiding inside the stone statue? The war chariot that was close to the 10th grade actually failed to kill this old man? On the other hand, Immortal Lowly was a little surprised that Fan Lianxiu could survive the attack of the lightning cannon. She wanted to risk her life to attack Fan Lianxiu again. However, she suddenly realized that a golden light flashed beside her and Ning Fan's figure appeared. "Thank you for standing in front of me when I was in trouble." Ning Fan patted the head of Immortal Lowly's primordial spirit. His smile was very warm. His black robes had already faded and turned back into white robes with silver hair. Every time immortal Loli stood in front of him to protect him, it touched his heart and made him value his relationship with her even more. Even if that relationship was just a fictitious father-daughter relationship. You're tired. Let me handle the rest of the matters. Immortal Loli could not see Ningfan's smile because of the ghost mask. However, she could see the smile in his eyes. It was extremely gentle, as if it could melt away all the coldness in the world. It was her first time seeing such a gentle look in Ningfan's eyes. She could not help but nod her head obediently and giggled. All right, let father go and catch that old man Shuehun. Xian just wanted to rest. Wait for me to come back. Ningfan's body flashed and turned into a golden rainbow, chasing after Fan Lianxiu. Fan Lianxiu, who was running tiredly, suddenly realized that Ningfan was chasing after him. He immediately complained. Since his stone body was destroyed, he had almost no chance of winning against Ningfan now. He carried the blood pond and continued to run while holding the blood bow spirit in his hand. Seeing that Ningfan was getting closer and closer to him, Fan Lianxiu's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He was like a lone wolf that was going to fight for his life. He suddenly stopped and turned around. Even though my stone body is destroyed, the power of this arrow is still not something you can withstand. Turn the hatred of all living beings into my arrows. Kill, kill, kill. Fan Lianxiu's eyes were filled with madness. He waved his hand and drew out a large amount of Joss flames of slaughter from the blood pond. Instantly he shouted the word, kill, 3 times. Each time he shouted a word, he would shoot out a slaughter blood arrow. 3 slaughter blood arrows pierced through the sky and went straight for Ningfan. Since Fan Lianxiu had lost his stone body, the power of the slaughter blood arrows was not as strong as before. Even so, the 3 arrows still had the power to kill a peak Shikong realm expert. They were not to be underestimated. Facing the 3 arrows, Ningfan neither dodged nor evaded them. His eyes were deep and emotionless. The innate ghost mask kept emitting excitement. That excitement gradually infected Ningfan, as if it had fused with him. To Ningfan, the slaughter blood arrows were like a delicacy. Although he had refined the innate ghost mask in the past, he was still unable to control it perfectly due to his limited cultivation base. But at this moment, the innate ghost mask was willing to be perfectly controlled by Ningfan just to get the delicacy that was about to enter his mouth. It was as if there was a voice that kept bewitching Ningfan to devour the Joss flames of slaughter in front of him. It was as if there was a voice that kept urging him. Devour, devour, devour. Gradually, Ningfan's body was filled with an unknown confidence. This confidence made him take a step forward instead of retreating in the face of the 3 slaughter blood arrows. Closer, closer, closer. The 3 slaughter blood arrows pierced through the sky. Ningfan borrowed the power of the ghost mask and shouted a word. Bang. This word contained the power of the innate ghost mask. This word seemed to have a natural suppressive effect on all the Joss flames of slaughter in the world. It was as if all the killings in the world had to listen to Ningfan's command. It was because he was the owner of the innate ghost mask. It was because he was the new young emperor of the Slaughter Palace in the last 6 million years. He was the master of all the killings in the world. As soon as the word fell, it was as if his words were the law. The 3 blood arrows that were flying towards him were actually shattered just like that. How is this possible? Fan Lianxiu was shocked. He attacked again and shot 7 arrows at Ningfan. As the 7 arrows approached, Ningfan's expression became even colder. He suddenly patted the top of his head and a primordial spirit flew out. That primordial spirit was Ningfan's primordial spirit. His primordial spirit looked at the 7 slaughter blood arrows with a cold and emotionless face. It used the power of the ghost mask to directly open its mouth and swallow the 7 arrows. Impossible! Even I can't ignore the damage of the Joss flames of slaughter. How could this kid swallow the slaughter blood arrows without suffering any damage? A feeling of shock instantly shrouded Fan Lianxiu's heart like a shadow. However, in the next moment, all the shock in Fan Lianxiu's heart froze. Ning Fan's primordial spirit returned to its original position and pointed his finger downwards. With just a finger, the west wind blew. The west wind was like the Tao and the death of a cultivator was like a leaf. Ning Fan's expression was cold. He looked at Fan Lianxiu like a decayed leaf. For a moment, Fan Lianxiu could not tell whether he was the dignified sixth-generation barbarian ancestor or an inconspicuous withered leaf. I think you are like a leaf. When the wind blows, the leaf is extinguished. As soon as Ning Fan uttered those words, the shadows of the leaves in the void turned into ashes and dissipated. Fan Lianxiu's bloody soul body also crumbled at the same time and vanished into thin air. What was left in this place was a blood pool that contained countless barbarian remnant souls and a young archer with ferocious eyes. The young archer's eyes were cold and emotionless. When he saw that Ning Fan had killed Fan Lianxiu, he directly flew towards Ning Fan. This archer was refined by Fan Lianxiu sacrificing countless lives when he was alive. It was extremely ferocious. No one could subdue it other than Fan Lianxiu. Ning Fan's eyes turned cold. Just as he was about to kill this archer, an extremely excited voice suddenly came from the profound Yin world. Master! The little Bao sensed that there is an archer with a high grade in the outside world. It just so happens that it can devour it. Master, quickly release the little Bao and devour that archer spirit. As long as Master allows me to devour that archer spirit, I will be absolutely loyal to Master from today onwards. I will never have any thoughts of betrayal. I am willing to guarantee this with my Bao. The excited voice came from the archer spirit of the candle Bao. At this moment, the archer spirit of the candle Bao was sealed in the profound Yin world by Ning Fan. Even though it was separated by the profound Yin world, the archer spirit could still sense that there was a great tonic approaching from the outside world. Master, I beg you to let me devour that archer spirit. That is the legendary, inferior innate archer spirit. At the same time, old ancestor Poisonous Dragon, who was far away, suddenly became furious. He was holding the compass in his hand. Out of the 7 rubies that were inlaid on it, the 6th one was broken. Damn it! The ancient statue of the 6th-generation barbarian ancestor has been destroyed. Chapter 902. Looking at the broken ruby on the compass, old ancestor Poisonous Dragon's eyes became darker and darker. On the other hand, Venerate Ao Xian said calmly, Fellow Taoist Poisonous Dragon, you don't have to worry about this. One ancient statue has been destroyed and there are still 6 more. As long as we can find an ancient statue within 6 days, there's still a chance to salvage the situation of awakening the ancient passage. Fellow Taoist Ao Xian is right. I was too emotional. Old ancestor Poisonous Dragon took a deep breath and calmed himself down. He kept the compass and closed his eyes to continue recuperating. Inferior innate level Bao spirit. The words of the candle Bao's spirit made Ning Fan's eyes flicker. He did not stop using his abilities. He pointed his index finger forward and the power of heaven and earth immediately whistled out, forming a seal that froze the young Bao spirit who was charging at him in the sky. His 5 fingers pressed forward again and a powerful force spread out. At this moment, Ning Fan had activated the secret word of force to its limit. The young Bao spirit could not move at all. He groaned in pain and gradually, more and more seals appeared in his body. The ferocity in his eyes was suppressed bit by bit. He let out an unwilling roar and turned into a blood-red iron Bao. Ning Fan's expression was still cold. He bent his palm and waved, keeping the blood Bao in his hand. He glanced around and nodded without saying anything. Sensing that the young Bao spirit was subdued by Ning Fan, the sealed spirit of the candle Bao in the profound Yin world became even more excited. Master, did you catch the innate level Bao spirit that time? Quickly give it to me to devour. This is a great tonic, really a great tonic. Noisy. Hearing that the Bao spirit was still making noise, Ning Fan frowned and let out a cold snort. He activated the seal in his body. All of a sudden, the Bao spirit let out a series of miserable cries and could no longer speak. There were many types of weapon spirits. Swords had sword spirits and axes had axe spirits. This bow spirit was naturally one of the types of weapon spirits. Among the weapon spirits, there were strong and weak ones. Most of them were divided into 5 grades: mortal grade, immortal grade, acquired grade, inferior innate grade and innate grade. Upon closer inspection, this blood bow spirit was indeed an inferior innate level bow spirit. However, Ning Fan had other matters to attend to at the moment and did not have the time to deal with it. After keeping the seal, Ning Fan's eyes swept across the surroundings and looked at the blood pool not far away. Ning Fan chased after Fan Lianxiu all the way. They had already traveled quite a distance. Other than him, there was only this massive blood pool left in the void space. The blood pool contained too many remnant souls of the barbarians. There were trillions of them, and it was impossible to count them all. They were all packed together. All of these remnant souls were the mortals whom Fan Lianxiu had slaughtered before. At first, all of them were filled with resentment. However, after Ning Fan killed Fan Lianxiu, all of them kowtowed to him 3 times and 9 times. They cried and wailed. Their expressions were filled with gratitude. They were babbling about something, and judging from their expressions, they seemed to be expressing their gratitude. However, they could only make ghostly sounds and could not speak in human language. Once Fan Lianxiu died, the blood pool began to crumble bit by bit. The remnant souls of the barbarians in the blood pool dissipated bit by bit with the wind. They had died long ago in the ancient times. Their remnant souls should not have existed to this day. If the barbarians died, they would no longer be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation because the heavenly Tao of reincarnation in the wilderness had been destroyed in ancient times. Looking at the hundreds of millions of barbarian souls that were dispersing, Ning Fan was powerless to stop them. His eyes were filled with mixed emotions. He activated the Fu Li spiritual wheel, trying to use its power to contain these remnant souls. However, he realized that it was impossible. The Fu Li spiritual wheel could only contain people who were unyielding even in death. These barbarians were not killed in battle, nor were they unyielding. Therefore, it was impossible to contain them. They were a group of people who were abandoned by the samsara. After they died, they would vanish into thin air. They only had this life and no afterlife. Ning Fan remained silent. He took out a jar of wine from his storage pouch. He opened the mud seal and sprinkled the wine into the blood pool, as a way to send off these barbarians who were abandoned by the samsara. His eyes gradually became blank. At this moment, he seemed to have seen the fate of the barbarians. That fate was like a line. There was a beginning and an end, but there was no turning back. At the same time, he seemed to have understood the fate of the mortals in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. Their fate was like a circle. They were connected by life and death. Regardless of whether they were alive or dead, they would always be in the circle, repeating the scenes of life and death. That circle was called samsara. The barbarians have lost the right to enter samsara, but what is samsara? At the moment when the last barbarian's soul dissipated, Ning Fan closed his eyes and stopped thinking. When he opened his eyes again, there was no longer any expression on his face. The blood pool collapsed and the remnant souls dispersed. The only thing that was left was the joss flames of slaughter that had accumulated in the blood pool. The amount of the joss flames was incomparably huge. As the blood pool collapsed, the joss flames spread in all directions like a sea of mist. These joss flames of slaughter were produced by the dead barbarian's hatred towards the barbarian ancestor. To the innate ghost mask, the accumulation of countless years seemed to have become the most delicious delicacy. Ning Fan pondered for a moment and finally decided to collect these joss flames of slaughter. He took out a blue and white porcelain vase and pointed the mouth of the vase at the sea of joss flames. He chanted the word, "collect," and the billowing sea of mist immediately flowed into the vase. This porcelain vase was a first Nirvana heaven immortal treasure. It was unknown which battle it was obtained from. At first, the blue and white porcelain vase was collecting the joss flames smoothly. However, when it had collected less than 1% of the entire sea of joss flames, it suddenly split into 2 with a loud bang. All the joss flames that had been collected flowed back into the sea of mist. This blue and white porcelain vase could not withstand too much Joss flames of slaughter. That was why it was destroyed. A first Nirvana Heaven Immortal Treasure was the most commonly used magical treasure by early True Crossing realm cultivators. However, it could not even collect 1% of the Joss flames in this place. Ning Fan's eyes flickered. He took out a third Nirvana Heaven Immortal Treasure. A third Nirvana Heaven Immortal Treasure was considered as an extremely powerful magical treasure to any True Crossing realm cultivator. The grade of this red copper incense burner was not low. However, it could only collect 1/20th of the Joss flames of the Sea of Mist. Then, it exploded and the Joss flames scattered in all directions. There are too many Joss flames of slaughter in this place. Ordinary magical treasures can't withstand this level of Joss flames at all. However, I wonder how powerful a magical treasure is needed to collect all the Joss flames of slaughter in this place. Ning Fan turned his hand and took out a fifth Nirvana Heaven Devil banner. He waved it at the Joss flames of slaughter and the surging Joss flames of slaughter was immediately absorbed into the Devil banner. A fifth Nirvana Heaven Immortal Treasure was considered as a powerful magical treasure to any cultivator in the Empty Shedding realm. The 4 minor swords of Ning Fan's 5 rain swords was only at the fifth Nirvana Heaven Immortal Treasure. However, the flag could only absorb 1/5 of the Joss flames of slaughter before it couldn't bear the power of the Joss flames and exploded. There were still a few 6th Nirvana and 7th Nirvana acquired immortal treasures in his storage pouch. Just as he was considering whether he should use these treasures to experiment, he suddenly thought of something. With a flip of his hand, he took out a terrifyingly heavy purple gourd from the profound Een world. This purple gourd was an innate realm gourd. It could be used as a material to refine innate magic treasures. When Ning Fan had just arrived in Eastern Heaven, he obtained it by cutting the divine chests on a trading planet called Shaoza Star. In the past, due to his low cultivation base, he could not even move the gourd. Today, he could already move the gourd slightly with his divine ability, but he didn't have the ability to refine it into a Xiantian magical treasure. Normally, only immortal emperors were qualified to refine innate magic treasures. Naturally, Ning Fan was unable to do so. The interior of the purple gourd was hollow and was naturally suitable for storing things. At this moment, it was taken out by Ning Fan as a vessel to contain the Joss flames of slaughter. With the power of the innate gourd, it should be able to withstand the power of the Joss flames. Ning Fan lifted the gourd and pointed the mouth of the gourd at the misty sea of Joss flames. Then he muttered the word, absorb. Countless streams of Joss flames gushed into the mouth of the gourd. After a few breaths' time, all the Joss flames were absorbed into the gourd, leaving not a single trace behind. The purple gourd did not show any signs of damage even after absorbing such a massive amount of Joss flames. Seeing this, Ning Fan nodded and kept the gourd back into the profound Een world. There was no point in staying here any longer. Thus, he turned around and returned to where he came from. When Ning Fan returned, be it the group of cultivators from Zichao's war division or the 200,000 wild beasts that he brought back, all of them had already landed outside the Heavenly Man City. As soon as they saw Ning Fan returning with the baleful chi from killing Fan Lianxiu, the group of cultivators cupped their fists towards the sky. Senior, thank you for killing that ferocious creature and saving our lives. The 10,000 cultivators shouted at the same time. Their voices naturally resounded through the clouds. The 200,000 wild beasts that were prostrating on the ground raised their heads and let out gentle beastly roars towards the sky, as if they were welcoming Ning Fan's return. There were also some human houses that were empty. Normally, they would be arrogant and proud. However, the way they looked at Ning Fan was like how juniors would look at their seniors. Even Mounz, old ancestor Jin Hua, Ting Nan, Tung Bei and the other human cultivators did not dare to be negligent. All of them cupped their fists towards the sky. If someone did not know what was going on and saw this scene, they would certainly think that they were welcoming a certain immortal venerable of the human race. This kind of extravagance was just too grand. As soon as Ning Fan returned, he directly landed on the city wall of the Heavenly Man City. As soon as he landed, the immortal Loli who was jumping around like a monkey giggled sweetly and jumped into Ning Fan's arms. She wrapped her arms around Ning Fan's neck like an octopus and took in Ning Fan's scent. She felt incomparably relieved. "Father, have you already killed old man Shuehun?" Ning Fan nodded his head and stroked the silver hair of the little lowly in his arms lovingly. At this moment, the immortal lowly's primordial spirit had already returned to her body. Her complexion was rosy and her small face was radiant. A piece of flesh on her shoulder had been scratched off. However, under Rei Li's healing, the injury had completely healed. To her, having her primordial spirit captured by the lightning-capturing banner was not a tribulation. Instead, it was more like a fortuitous encounter. The sea of lightning in the lightning-capturing banner had already been devoured by her. The lightning-capturing banner had also been destroyed. As for her chi, it was no longer any weaker than an early thought fragmentation realm cultivator. After putting down the joyful immortal lowly, Ning Fan's spirit sense swept across the broken continent. His expression became slightly solemn. Even though he had killed Fan Lianxiu, there were still tens of thousands of cultivators who died in his hands during this battle. Zichao's war division originally had 100,000 guards. Now, there were less than 60,000 of them. Even the human cultivators whom Ning Fan had saved previously had also died in Fan Lianxiu's hands. Ning Fan gently closed his eyes. Once the great chaos began, human lives would become worthless. Only the strong could survive in this great calamity. Ting Nan, Ting Bei and many old monsters of the human race came to greet Ning Fan one after another, thanking him for saving their lives. If it wasn't for Ning Fan's timely arrival, all of them would probably have died in Fan Lianxiu's hands this time. In front of these old monsters of the human race, Ning Fan used the identity of Zhao Jian. To Zhao Dai, Fairy Han Wu, Earth Devil and the others who were familiar with him, Ning Fan secretly transmitted his voice to remind them not to reveal his true name in front of outsiders. Then he briefly told them about how he saved the immortal lowly's primordial spirit. During this trip, Ning Fan brought back 200,000 savage beasts, Mounz, old ancestor Jin Hua and other helpers. After devouring the sea of lightning in the lightning-capturing banner, immortal lowly's strength had increased tremendously. Now, she could be considered as a great help. With these helpers, Ning Fan was quite confident that he could rescue venerated Miao Yen in one go. There's also the Zichou War Division. They can also be a great help to rescue venerated Miao Yen. Ning Fan's gaze swept across Ting Nan and Ting Bei. When their eyes met, the two of them immediately smiled. After the desolate world was destroyed, the 6 war divisions under the command of 6 Unity Immortal venerated Miao Yen dispersed. At this moment, there were already 5 war divisions that had contacted 6 Unity Immortal venerated Miao Yen and they were heading towards the place where the 6 Unity Immortal venerated Miao Yen was. However, the Zichou War Division was the only exception. Fan Lianxiu destroyed the Sound Jade Tablet they used to communicate with the main forces of the human race. As a result, the Zichou War Division had no idea where the 6 combos Immortal venerated Miao Yen was at all. Fortunately, Ting Nan and Ting Bei learned from Mounz that Ning Fan's group was currently going to look for venerated Miao Yen. As for the world where venerated Miao Yen was at, it seemed like it was not far away from the world of the Gate of Life. There were only a few worlds between them. In their opinion, as long as they travel with Ning Fan's group, they would be able to find venerated Miao Yen in no time. Hence, under the leadership of Ting Nan and Ting Bei, the entire Zichou War Division directly stayed on Ning Fan's broken continent and followed him. The helpers around Ning Fan increased once again. The group of cultivators only hoped that they could find venerated Miao Yen easily during this trip. However, they did not know that venerated Miao Yen was currently trapped in the world of the Gate of Death. Ning Fan had concealed this point and did not mention it. Once he tells them about it, there would probably be many cultivators who were afraid of the dangers of the Gate of Death. They would immediately leave and give up on finding venerated Miao Yen. Before they arrive at their destination, Ning Fan did not intend to tell the group of cultivators the truth. Let's just say that he was purposely tricking his teammates. With Ning Fan here, Immortal concubine Zhang Yu naturally did not need to use the piercing golden light anymore. The void-piercing stone fell in front of the group of beasts. The beasts guarded it carefully. As Ning Fan pointed at it from afar, black mist surged out from the void-piercing stone and enveloped the broken continent. Ning Fan then activated the piercing golden light, causing the entire broken continent to immediately shoot out like an arrow that was shot from the bow. Its speed was even faster than before. As it flew at full speed, it was getting closer and closer to the world of the Gate of Death where venerated Miao Yen was at. Venerated Miao Yen, even though I have never met you before, you have helped me once. Today, I will return the favor. 1 hour passed by. Ning Fan had passed through 4 worlds of the Gate of Life. The further he went, the more Mounz felt like he had been tricked. What entered his sight were pieces of broken continents that were floating in the void. They were in a state of desolation and there was no sign of any living beings. This was the place where venerated Miao Yen was at. However, when they arrived at this place, they did not see venerated Miao Yen. Fellow Taoist Zhao, didn't you say that venerated Miao Yen is here? Why can't I see him? Could it be that venerated Miao Yen has already left this place? Mounz's heart was beating rapidly, but his face showed an apologetic smile. There were a lot of people who felt doubtful. However, Ning Fan did not intend to solve their doubts one by one. He drove the broken continent and flew to the front of one of the giant scarlet doors. He activated his rain technique and carefully sensed the interior of the door. With his eyesight, he could tell that it was a gate of death at first glance, but the others could not. When he sensed that the danger inside the door was much lower than what he had expected, he smiled faintly and activated his ability. Then, he drove the entire broken continent and flew into the door. This is the world of the Gate of Death. Fellow Taoist Zhao, why did you bring us into the world of the Gate of Death? Senior Zhao, you must have entered the wrong door. Leave this world at once. The world of the Gate of Death. It's actually the world of the Gate of Death. This place is extremely dangerous. We must leave now. Immediately, countless cultivators on the broken continent exclaimed in surprise. Ning Fan's voice spread out in a timely manner. Everyone, please calm down. Look carefully. Venerated Miao Yen is right here. This was Ning Fan's first time entering the world of the Gate of Death. The world of the Gate of Death was not a void. Everywhere that entered his sight was endless sand. There was a huge desert floating in the middle of this world. The sand at the nearest part of the desert was golden in color. If one goes further into the desert, the sand would turn black. If one goes further into the desert, the sand would turn blood red. In this desert, there was a hidden killing formation every few steps. If cultivators below the thought fragmentation realm enter the Gate of Death and trigger the killing formation, they would certainly die. Fortunately, the fearsome formation at the entrance of this world had already been destroyed by venerated Miao Yen. If one does not go deep into this world, there would not be any danger. This was also the reason why Ning Fan dared to drive the broken continent into this world. Ning Fan's eyes turned solemn as he looked at the blood sand region at the center of the desert. Within the blood sand region, he could vaguely see 8 stone towers. The top of each stone tower was pasted with an immortal talisman drawn with a red brush. There was only one word on the talisman: seal. Each of the 8 stone towers occupied a direction and surrounded the 10,000 li region according to the position of the 8 trigrams. It actually gave off an extremely dangerous feeling. Ning Fan could vaguely see something through the endless sand. In the deepest part of the blood sand region, there was the figure of a lady who was fighting a bitter battle with hundreds of giants. She was venerated Miao Yen. Her enemies were stone giants that were more than 100,000 zhang tall. All of them were formed by the power of formations. She was trapped at the center of the 8 stone towers. If she was at her peak, she would probably be able to break the 8 stone towers and fight her way out. Unfortunately, she could not break out of the encirclement of the 8 stone towers at the moment unless there was a fellow Taoist whose cultivation base was close to the immortal venerable realm who was willing to risk his life to help her. Currently, venerated Miao Yan's face was as pale as a piece of paper. Her beautiful face was filled with bitterness. It had been a day since she asked Ning Fan for help. However, Ning Fan did not come to save her in the end. This made her feel a little self-deprecating and disappointed. That fellow Taoist still doesn't plan to save me after all. Could it be that I'm really going to die in this place? Venerated Miao Yen let out a faint sigh. She was already at the end of her rope. She was only holding on with her willpower while waiting for help. At this moment, when she thought that the other party might not come to save her at all, her heart sank again and again. Her willpower also crumbled bit by bit. However, just as she was about to lose all hope, a broken consonant suddenly flew into her ears from the distant void. Then, a man's voice came from the broken consonant. In an instant, it went into her ears and went into her heart. That voice was obviously cold, but there was a hint of concern for her. After being stunned for a moment, she immediately smiled. She actually felt touched. That mysterious fellow Taoist did not abandon her. He actually came to save her despite the dangers of this place. Most cultivators were selfish. This person's voice was cold and indifferent. Obviously, he was a cold-hearted person. However, he was still willing to save her. Why? Who could that person be? Give me 10 breaths of time. I will certainly save you in 10 breaths of time. Chapter 903. 10 breaths was not an arrogant promise that Ning Fan made. Instead, it was a guarantee that he made after some deliberation. He had comprehended the Eastern Sky Ancestor Emperor's secret, power, character and could see through the flow of the formation. The ferocious formation before them used sand as a formation that was compatible with the earth element. It was divided into 3 formations: blood sand, black muslin, and yellow sand. The yellow sand formation was the weakest, while the blood sand formation was the strongest. The source of the formation's power was the 8 stone pagodas in the blood sand formation. Within the 3-layered array, momentum flowed like the ebb and flow of the tide. Every 10 breaths, the momentum of the array would be at its weakest, and it was also the best time to break the array. The only thing that made Ning Fan fearful was the scarlet word, seal, on the 8 stone pagodas. That seal seemed to contain a power that came from ancient times. It was as if everything in this world would be sealed by that power. Under the power of the seal, the entrance to the gate of death was gradually sealed. It became a place where one could only enter and not leave. Some cultivators tried to use their divine abilities to fly out of the death gate, but they found that they couldn't. Many old monsters gradually realized that unless they destroyed the formation here, no one would be able to leave. As Ning Fan's voice spread out, many human cultivators spread out their spirit sense and probed into the depths of the fearsome formation. No one could believe that Venerable Wisdom Words was trapped in the death gate. Unfortunately, many human experts recognized Venerable Miao Yan's aura and could confirm that the woman trapped in the formation was Miao Yan. What? Venerable Wisdom Words is actually trapped in this ominous formation. This isn't good. This isn't good. How powerful is this ominous formation that can even trap Venerable Wise Words? It's too difficult for us to destroy this ominous formation, but I've already entered this place. If I don't destroy the ominous formation, I won't be able to leave. I can only brace myself and continue. Speaking of which, if we can destroy this ominous formation, not only can we protect ourselves, but we can also save Venerable Wise Words. It can be considered as a great contribution. The sounds of discussion rose everywhere. As soon as Ning Fan gave the order, the crowd of cultivators instantly fell silent. Now that we're trapped in the realm of the death gate, none of us will be able to leave if we don't destroy this ominous formation. If you want to escape from this place, then attack together with me. Destroy the formation and save Venerable Wisdom Words. As soon as Ning Fan gave the order, his voice immediately resounded across the vast sky, reaching the ears of every cultivator on the broken continent. He leaped into the air with the army of 200,000 savage beasts following behind him. They charged toward the fearsome yellow sand formation with an indomitable aura, as though nothing could stop their footsteps. His eyes were filled with burning battle intent. The force of the battle of yin and yang was fully unleashed at this moment. causing all the battle intent between the heavens and earth to form a connection with him. Any cultivator who heard his words would inexplicably feel a surge of courage in their hearts, and it was as if they had received a great encouragement. Their will to fight rose sharply, and when they looked at the dangerous formation again, they actually didn't feel afraid anymore. Ning Fan's words kept echoing in the ears of the cultivators. His voice was like hypnotizing, bewitching, enlightening. Their gazes gradually became blank, but soon after, they revealed unswerving determination and fearless expressions. Be it the cultivators who were in trouble on the Devil Essence Arc, the members of Zichao's combat division, or the cultivators whom Ning Fan had saved previously, none of them could resist the influence of Ning Fan's battle intent as long as their cultivation base was lower than the shedding void realm. All of them soared into the sky and followed Ning Fan closely, dashing toward the yellow sand grand formation. We are willing to follow behind Senior Zhao and destroy the fearsome formation to save venerable wisdom words and escape with our lives. If they want to live, they must destroy the fearsome formation together. The shouts of the cultivators resounded through the clouds. Their voices were filled with overwhelming battle intent. Their auras were all indomitable. This was the power of the battle of yin and yang. It could weaken the battle intent of others and also inspire the hearts of the cultivators, increasing their courage and making their blood boil. Gradually, even some shedding void realm old monsters were inspired by Ning Fan and rushed out to join the formation. As for the four-eyed devil monarch, Fairy Han Wu, and the others who were already familiar with Ning Fan, they had already rushed out. The one who rushed at the front was the smiling immortal Lowly. The one who rushed at the back was immortal concubine Zhang Yu, who was mumbling unwillingly. Even Lu Yen, who had a low cultivation base, also rushed out and followed closely behind Ning Fan. Other than Zhao De and the barbarians of Heaven Barbarian City who could not fly in the sky, almost all the cultivators flew out after being encouraged by Ning Fan. Mo Yuanzi, old ancestor Jin Hua, Ting Nan and Ting Bei looked at each other and sucked in a cold breath. All four of them were broken thoughts old monsters. They could vaguely tell that Ning Fan had used some tricks to encourage the cultivators to attack. That kind of trick was too powerful. It involved the Tao law which was beyond their understanding. The way out has already been sealed. Since things have come to this, there's nothing we can do. Let's also take action. The only way out is to destroy the fearsome formation. Mo Yuanzi let out a long sigh and flew into the sky together with the other broken thoughts old monsters, joining the army of destroying the formation. Inwardly, however, he was feeling nervous. He was the first human broken thoughts old monster who met Ning Fan. Along the way, he had been doubting the authenticity of Ning Fan's information. He was afraid that he would be tricked by Ning Fan. Now that he was tricked by Ning Fan into a dead end, he could only complain inwardly. However, there was nothing he could do. He could only brace himself and follow Ning Fan. 1 breath. 2 breaths. 3 breaths. The yellow sand grand formation was already 1,000 zhang away from them. Ning Fan pressed his 5 fingers forward. Immediately, a rainstorm poured down from heaven and earth. Under his control, the rainwater condensed into a giant palm and slammed down on the yellow sand grand formation. He was not the only one who attacked. All the wild beasts and cultivators who were close to the yellow sand grand formation launched their attacks at the yellow sand grand formation. Rays of light of different colors landed on the yellow sand grand formation. Immediately, the desert was riddled with thousands of holes. At the 4th breath, it collapsed. The first of the 3 layers of fearsome formations, the yellow sand grand formation, was broken. Seeing that the first layer of the fearsome formation was broken, the crowd of cultivators immediately cheered. Their confidence in following Ning Fan to destroy the fearsome formation became stronger. Tens of thousands of divine abilities paved the way. Ning Fan led the army and rushed forward. His eyes were filled with unstoppable faith. On the 5th breath, they were close to the range of the black sand grand formation. On the 6th breath, hundreds of thousands of divine abilities penetrated through the formation. On the 7th breath, the black sand grand formation was broken. In front of them, the most powerful red sand grand formation was finally revealed. 8 strange stone towers that towered into the sky appeared in front of the crowd of cultivators. Even venerated Miao Yen would find it hard to destroy the 8 stone towers from the inside out. However, it was not difficult to destroy them from the outside. The key was to find the right opportunity. At the 8th breath, Ning Fan did not attack. At the 9th breath, Ning Fan summoned the 10 swords of rain and war. At the 10th breath, Ning Fan suddenly dashed out, directly dashing towards the most dilapidated stone tower among the 8 stone towers. That was the 5th stone tower. It had already been damaged by venerated Miao Yan's repeated attacks. At this moment, it was the weakest moment of the Red Sand Grand Formation. At this moment, Ning Fan gave an order. The divine abilities of the crowd of cultivators immediately attacked the stone tower that he was attacking. Tens of thousands of divine abilities converged into a ray of dazzling divine light. Within that ray of divine light, Ning Fan used his 10 swords to open the way. Like a falling meteor, he directly crashed into the 5th stone tower. Venerated Miao Yen, who was fighting against the stone giants, suddenly turned her head and looked at the 5th stone tower. What she saw was the scene of the 5th stone tower collapsing from the outside to the inside under the attacks of tens of thousands of divine abilities. The 8 stone towers were connected to each other. If one of them was destroyed, all of them would be destroyed. Ning Fan only destroyed one of the stone towers, but the other 7 stone towers all collapsed at the same time. The countless stone giants that were attacking venerated Miao Yen also let out a miserable cry and disappeared altogether. The Red Sand Grand Formation was broken. Venerated Miao Yen had broken free. She turned her head to look. At the 10th breath, she saw a silver-haired man with a ghostly face rushing towards her with tens of thousands of divine abilities. That man's eyes were so cold and indifferent. She could not see any trace of emotion in his eyes. It was as if destroying the fearsome formation of the Gate of Death to save her was just a trivial matter that should be taken for granted. Even though it was obviously a cold and emotionless gaze, it caused a ripple in venerated Miao Yan's heart which had been calm for many years. Venerated Miao Yan stared blankly at Ning Fan, who was rushing towards her. She did not shift her gaze away. When she was at her most desperate moment, this man disregarded the danger and came to save her. Thank you. A bright and beautiful smile suddenly appeared on her pale and weak face. She had been holding on all the way until now. She was already on the verge of exhaustion, and she was only holding on with her willpower. Now that she was out of danger, she already felt a deep sense of fatigue before she could even see clearly who the person who saved her was. Her vision turned black and she directly fainted, falling from the sky. She was very sleepy. She could not open her eyes, she was very tired. She could not muster up any strength at all. In a daze, venerated Miao Yen vaguely felt that she had fallen into the arms of a man. What she smelled was the scent of the man. That scent carried the smell of blood that could not be dispelled. Before he saved her, this man must have been tainted by too many killings. Ning Fan's expression became slightly strange. He caught venerated Miao Yen, who was falling from the sky, and held her in his arms. This woman was obviously covered in blood, but her body was giving off a faint fragrance. That fragrance was a little sweet. It was the fragrance of the green apple grass. Even though Ning Fan was holding a warm and fragrant jade in his arms, he could not bring himself to have any other thoughts. After all, he was holding an immortal venerated Miao Yen whose cultivation base was still intact. She actually fainted. I think she must have exhausted all of her strength to hold on until now. Ning Fan sighed with emotion. If he had come a little later, perhaps venerated Miao Yen would have really died in this ominous formation. Stepping on a ray of light, Ning Fan carried venerated Miao Yen and flew back to the broken continent. This scene made many cultivators who were following Ning Fan widen their eyes. They were speechless. What did they just see? The dignified venerated Miao Yen was actually carried back by Ning Fan. Her head was dizzy and her sea of consciousness was aching faintly. She wanted to open her eyes, but she could not. After sleeping for an unknown period of time, venerated Miao Yen suddenly felt a pair of hands moving around her body as if someone was taking off her clothes. She could feel that her clothes were being stripped off one by one. She could feel a chill on her chest. Even her bra was being taken off. Who is it? Who is taking off my clothes? Could it be that fellow Taoist who saved me from danger? Venerated Miao Yen was both embarrassed and angry. She wanted to open her eyes to take a look, but she could not do so. Suddenly, she felt a cold sensation on her body. She heard the sound of water beside her ears. It seemed like someone had put her into the water. Then, she felt a pair of hands moving around her body as if it was helping her to scrub her body. Who is helping me to bathe? Could it be him? Ning Fan's figure that was rushing towards her appeared in venerated Miao Yan's mind. Her face turned even redder. She could feel that the hands were stroking her back, which was as smooth as satin from time to time. At other times, they were stroking her plump and soft chest. She felt an inexplicable sense of irritation and anger towards that person's boldness and frivolity. After an unknown period of time, venerated Miao Yen finally regained a trace of strength and opened her eyes. She saw herself sitting in a wooden basin. The petals of the green apple grass were floating on the surface of the water. Beside her, a pair of delicate and small hands were helping her to scrub her body. It was not Ning Fan's hands but the hands of a woman. Tong-er? Why are you the one helping me to scrub my body? I thought it was. Only then did venerated Miao Yen see clearly that the one who had been helping her to bathe was not Ning Fan, who was taking advantage of her as she imagined, but her maidservant, Tong-er. She heaved a sigh of relief. Inwardly, she thought that her imagination was running wild. Her question had stunned Tong-er. She was venerated Miao Yan's maidservant. Naturally, she should be the one helping venerated Miao Yen bathe. If it's not her, who else could it be? How long have I been unconscious? Venerated Miao Yen spread her spirit sense and asked Tong-er at the same time. In reply to Master, Master has been unconscious for 3 whole days. 3 days? In other words, 4 whole days have passed since the blood sacrifice ceremony. Damn it! I've been unconscious for too long. Venerated Miao Yen frowned and asked Tong-er many more questions, such as the whereabouts of the cultivator who had saved her. After a series of questions, venerated Miao Yan's expression gradually changed. Only then did she know that the person who had saved her was called Zhao Jian. Even Tong-er was saved by Zhao Jian? Zhao Jian, is it? If it wasn't for this fellow Taoist who saved me, I would most likely be a dead man now. This is a great favor that I can't forget. Venerated Miao Yen muttered to herself. Suddenly, venerated Miao Yan's beautiful eyes widened as if she had sensed something. She casually pulled a bath towel and wrapped it around her body. With a flash, she appeared in front of the window and looked at the sky of Heavenly Man City in disbelief. In the sky, there were actually 2 ancient statues that were approaching her little by little. Those 2 ancient statues had actually locked onto her chi and were searching for her all the way here. 3 days had passed since venerated Miao Yen was rescued. For 3 whole days, venerated Miao Yen was still unconscious. Under Ning Fan's control, the broken continent had already flown out of the gate of death. However, there was no destination for it to move forward. When venerated Miao Yen was unconscious, Ning Fan had also searched through her storage pouch. He automatically ignored the various undergarments in the pouch. He just wanted to find if there was any communication item that could help him contact 6 Unity immortal venerated beings. Unfortunately, Ning Fan did not find what he needed. The broken continent was flying aimlessly in each of the Gate of Life. The people who were controlling the continent were Mounz, Old Ancestor Jin Hua, and the other 2 human cultivators. Of course, the 4 of them did not have the same level of divine ability as the piercing golden light. However, with their combined strength and the power of the space-penetrating stone, they could still make the broken continent fly slowly. Since venerated Miao Yen had yet to wake up, Ning Fan waited bitterly for no result. Thus, he went into the profound Yin world 3 days ago and began to deal with some miscellaneous matters. Naturally, it was to further increase his power to protect himself during the great calamity of the savage wilderness. The first thing he needed to deal with was the inferior innate realm Bao spirit. Secondly, he needed to deal with the massive amount of Joss flames of slaughter. Time returned to 3 days ago. In the profound Yin world, Ning Fan sat in a lotus position in his cave residence in the Western world. 2 longbows were placed in front of him. One of them was a longbow with a dragon horn. It was the form of the candle bow spirit. The other one was a blood-red iron bow. It was the inferior innate realm bow spirit that Ning Fan had obtained from Fan Lianxiu. At this moment, the blood-red iron bow was constantly emitting evil qi. It was trying to break free from the seal while locking its killing intent on Ning Fan. As for the longbow with a dragon horn, it was constantly trying to flatter Ning Fan. Its purpose of flattering Ning Fan was none other than to devour the other blood bow spirit. Master, do you know how much Xiao Gong respects you in his heart? Other than the previous master, Xiao Gong has never respected anyone else. No, compared to you, Little Gong's previous master is practically worthless. Master, please do me a favor and let me devour that innate realm bow spirit. Master, how can you bear to see me keep begging you and being so lonely? The noisy voice of the candle bow spirit echoed in Ning Fan's ears. Ning Fan ignored the candle bow spirit. His eyes moved back and forth between the longbow with a dragon horn and the blood-red longbow. His brows were slightly furrowed from time to time as if he was struggling to make a decision. There were 5 grades of weapon spirits: mortal grade, immortal grade, acquired grade, inferior innate grade and innate grade. In the 4 heavens and 9 worlds, the weapon spirits of most of the magic treasures in the hands of cultivators were only at the mortal grade. Only a small number of second-step old monsters were qualified to possess an immortal grade weapon spirit. Acquired grade weapon spirits were extremely rare. Usually, only thought fragmentation realm old monsters could possess a acquired grade weapon spirit. A inferior innate weapon spirit was almost as rare as an innate magical treasure. Basically, only immortal emperors were qualified to possess such a high-grade weapon spirit. As for an innate weapon spirit, Ning Fan had only heard about it in ancient books. He had never heard of any powerful cultivators in the 4 heavens who possessed an innate weapon spirit. The rarity of an innate weapon spirit was far beyond that of an innate magical treasure. Not even an immortal emperor was qualified to control a weapon spirit of that level. The 5 sword spirits in Ning Fan's sword pouch were only at the mortal grade when he first met them. Although Ning Fan bestowed them with 5 immortal swords and nurtured them together, gradually raising their grade to the immortal grade, it was still a long time before they could advance to the acquired grade. The difficulty in raising the grade of a weapon spirit could be seen from this. The function of a weapon spirit was to increase the power of a magical treasure. If Ning Fan had a 12 Nirvana Hotian Bao type magical treasure and added a Subscientian treasure spirit into the Bao, the power of the magical treasure would be able to surpass the limits of the Hotian realm and compete with a true Xiantian magical treasure. Weapon spirits of the same type could devour each other to increase their grade. The Blood Bao spirit was an inferior innate grade. The Candle Bao spirit was also an inferior innate grade. If the Candle Bao spirit could devour the Blood Bao spirit, even if it couldn't advance to the innate realm in one step, it could still greatly increase its power. Similarly, if the Blood Bao spirit devoured the Candle Bao spirit, it would have the same effect. The thing that Ning Fan couldn't decide was which Bao spirit to keep and devour the other Bao spirit. The Blood Bao spirit was ferocious and uncontrollable. The Candle Bao spirit was noisy and annoying, and often had the intention to betray him. If Ning Fan had a 3rd obedient Bao spirit, he would definitely feed the 2 inferior innate Bao spirits in front of him. Blood Bao. Let me ask you, if I give you a chance to devour this Dragonhorn Bao, are you willing to submit to me? Ning Fan pointed at the Blood Bao and slightly unlocked the seal on it. The Blood Bao immediately turned into a blood-red youth. The youth's eyes were cold and emotionless. He didn't answer Ning Fan's question and didn't even bother to look at the Candle Bao spirit. As soon as he revealed his human form, he immediately revealed a cruel smile, revealing his fangs, and tried to bite Ning Fan. Ning Fan shook his head and pointed at the youth, causing him to let out a muffled groan and turn back into a Bao. This youth only submitted to Fan Lianxiu alone. He really had a backbone. Unfortunately, he couldn't be used by Ning Fan. In that case, there was no room for him to leave. The Blood Bao spirit did not respond to Ning Fan's words, but the Candle Bao spirit did. When the Candle Bao spirit heard that Ning Fan actually had the intention to keep the Blood Bao and sacrifice himself, its body trembled uncontrollably. Half of it was because of anger and the other half was because of fear. Ning Fan was actually willing to use it to feed the Blood Bao. How could he even think of such a wicked idea? Master, you can't have this idea. Little Bao has been following you for tens of years. How can you feed Little Bao to a Little Bao spirit that has just come to you? You are liking the new and hating the old. Master, at least Little Bao has taught you the reverse spirit technique. Even if it doesn't have any merits, it still has its hard work. How can you treat me like this? Seeing Ning Fan's unmoved expression, the Candle Bao spirit's heart was filled with fear. It was thinking of a way to change Ning Fan's decision. No matter what, it did not want to be eaten by other Bao spirits. The Blood Bao is useless. I can only keep the Candle Bao. Ning Fan shook his head. He bent his finger and touched the Candle Bao, slightly undoing the seal on it. The Candle Bao spirit shook its body and immediately turned into an extremely wretched hunchbacked old man. Candle Bao, let me ask you, if I give you the chance to devour the Blood Bao, how will you repay me? What benefits can it bring me? As soon as the Candle Bao spirit heard this question, the hunchbacked old man immediately knelt on the ground with a thud and cried tears of joy. Ning Fan asking this question meant that he still had a chance to live. To him, this was simply great news. And Master, this little one is much more useful than that silly Bao. I can bring you many more benefits. The amount of Joss flames of slaughter that Master kept in the purple gourd is huge. This little one has already sensed it. This little one can help you refine those Joss flames of slaughter into Joss flame arrows. These aren't ordinary Joss flame arrows but the 7-colored incense flame arrows that my previous master taught me. With the grade of my Bao spirit, the success rate of refining the 6-colored incense flame arrows is almost 100%. It won't be difficult for me to kill an early thought fragmentation realm expert with one arrow. Master, do you know that the success rate of refining the 7-colored incense flame arrows is also 10%? Once the 7-colored incense flame arrows are fired, even an ancient immortal venerable would be severely injured. If Master is willing to let this little one devour the Blood Bao, this little one has the confidence to increase the success rate to 20%. At the end, the hunchbacked old man wiped his tears and said disdainfully while pointing at the Blood Bao. An ordinary inferior innate Bao spirit like this can at most refine an Joss flame arrow that can kill a void being. It definitely won't be as powerful as this little one. Ning Fan's expression changed as he recalled the scene when he fought with Fan Lianxiu. When Fan Lianxiu had the body of an ancient statue, the power of the Joss flame arrows he shot out had the power of an immortal venerable. However, once he lost the body of an ancient statue and lost the power of the ancient statue, the Joss flame arrows would only have the power to kill a void being. What was powerful was not the Joss flame arrows condensed by the Blood Bao spirit but Fan Lianxiu. The power of the 6-colored incense flame arrow that the Candle Bao spirit mentioned was already above the Blood Bao incense flame arrow. If the Candle Bao spirit could really refine the so-called 7-colored incense flame arrow and severely injure an ancient immortal venerable with one arrow, Ning Fan might be tempted by it. However, the authenticity of the Candle Bao spirit's words still needed to be verified. First, refine a 6-colored incense flame arrow for me to see. I'll use this arrow to prove whether what you said is true or not. Let's wash up and sleep. Chapter 904. The refinement of the 6-colored incense flame arrow was just a test to see if Candle Bao's words were true. Ning Fan bent his palm and summoned the purple gourd to him. He then pointed at it and the gourd immediately spun and flew towards the old man. The speed of the flight was extremely slow, and as it gradually approached, it gave the old man a feeling of pressure that was as heavy as a mountain. The old man stretched out his hand to catch the gourd, but as soon as he did so, a heavy pressure came from his palm. That kind of heaviness was beyond his ability to bear. With a loud bang, his entire body was crushed and turned into specks of phosphorescent light. The gourd fell on the ground of the cave with a loud bang. The entire mountain began to tremble. The phosphorescent light condensed again and the old man reappeared. When he looked at the purple gourd again, he was slightly shocked. He naturally knew that the gourd was an innate spiritual item, but he did not expect it to be so heavy. This heaviness came from the innate purple chi in the gourd. The heavier it was, the more powerful the innate purple chi it contained. Master, this gourd of yours is incredible. If it is refined into an innate magical treasure, it probably won't be an ordinary item. This gourd has yet to condense into the shape of a magical treasure. Little Bao, on the other hand, has a way to gradually condense it into the shape of a bao, gourd bao. If I have such an innate gourd bao, and so on. The old man's eyes darted back and forth. From time to time, he would let out a few wretched laughs. His eyes gradually became fiery. He was sealed by Ning Fan and could not escape. He could not break the seal with his current strength. As time passed, the seal gradually penetrated deep into his spirit body and became deeper. Without external help, he firmly believed that he would not have any hope of breaking the seal in his lifetime. However, if he could nurture an innate realm gourd bao, even if it was only the prototype of a magical treasure, he was quite confident that he could break the seal with the power of the bao. As long as this fiend gives this gourd to me to nurture, I will need at most 1,000 years to nurture this gourd into the shape of a bao. At that time, it won't be difficult for me to break the seal with the power of this bao. I can escape from this fiend's clutches. I must think of a way to get this gourd from this fiend. This is related to this old man's escape plan. Oh gourd, my happiness for the rest of my life depends on you. When he thought of the day when he could regain his freedom, the old man with the candle bao smiled even more wretchedly. His entire face looked like a blooming chrysanthemum. Zhu Gong's words caused Ning Fan's eyes to flicker. He seemed to be tempted. The first step of refining connate magical treasures was to let the materials absorb the power of heaven and earth and the essence of the sun and the moon to develop the prototype of the magical treasure. This step had to be done naturally and could not be assisted by external forces. Otherwise, it would affect the might of the connate treasure. Magical treasures condensed on their own, and the speed was extremely slow. If it was short, it would take 1,000 years. If it was long, it would take more than 1,000,000 years. However, if a higher-grade artifact spirit were to fuse with the refining materials and nurture the spirit item from the inside out, the time needed to condense the item would be greatly reduced. He had never considered what kind of magical treasure he should refine the purple gourd into. The gourd bao seemed to be a good choice. But Ning Fan's eyes narrowed slightly. He glanced at old man Zhu Gong. The latter's little thoughts naturally could not escape his eyes. After pondering for a moment, he said in a deep voice, "We'll talk about the gourd later. Hurry up and refine the 6-colored incense fire arrow." "Hey, master, let's talk about this gourd. If you continue to nag, I'll feed you to the blood-devouring bao." "Don't. Please calm down, master. I'll refine the arrow immediately. I'll refine the arrow immediately." Old man Zhu Gong reluctantly looked at the purple gourd on the ground. However, he understood that this was not the time for him to think about this gourd. "Hey, let's refine the arrow first. As long as I can preserve my life, I can slowly plan for the gourd." Old man Zhu Gong raised his hand and pointed at the purple gourd on the ground. The Joss flame of slaughter immediately flew out from the gourd's mouth like smoke. Upon seeing this, old man Zhu Gong sat down cross-legged and clasped his hands together. All the Joss flame of slaughter surged towards him and slowly condensed into an illusory arrow. In just an instant, the illusory arrow solidified. As old man Zhu Gong formed a complicated hand seal, the arrow began to change its color. At first, there was only one color. However, the color of the Joss flame arrow continued to increase, turning into 2 colors, 3 colors, 4 colors. Every time the Joss flame arrow gained more color, its power would increase tremendously. In the end, there was a total of 6 colors in the arrow. The stern killing intent emitted from the body of the arrow was enough to make any thought fragmentation true immortal look askance. The moment the Joss flame arrow condensed, Old Man Zhugong stood up abruptly and quickly let go of the gourd, as if he was afraid of touching the arrow. The Joss flame arrow flew up on its own and slowly hovered in the cave. The arrow intent it emitted made people feel suffocated. Indistinctly, the roar of an ancient dragon could be heard from the arrow. It carried an extremely vicissitudes of life. Hee master, please take a look. The 6-colored Joss flame arrow has been refined. Old Man Zhugong said to Ning Fan carefully with a smile. The quality of this 6-colored Joss flame arrow was average. It was neither high nor low. Even if he performed normally, he was not sure if Ning Fan would be satisfied with it. The time it took to refine this arrow was extremely short. However, it consumed 1/10 of the power of the Old Man Zhugong's bow spirit. He needed time to recover. A 6-colored Joss flame arrow had consumed 1% of the Joss flame of slaughter in the gourd. Judging from the huge amount of Joss flame, the consumption was not small. Ning Fan's eyes flickered as he glanced at the arrow. With a wave of his palm, the 6-colored Joss flame arrow stopped hovering and slowly descended into Ning Fan's palm. As soon as he grasped it, the body of the arrow ignited with a dazzling 6-colored flame. Suddenly, an illusion appeared in front of Ning Fan's eyes. It was as if there were billions and trillions of barbarians kowtowing to him with tears of blood in their eyes. They worshipped him unwaveringly for tens of thousands of years. The aura of the Joss flame of slaughter was too strong. The illusion disappeared in a flash. Ning Fan's mind was quickly awakened by the scorching heat in his palm. The Joss flame arrow in his palm was terrifyingly hot. It was as if everything that came into contact with this arrow would burn. A powerful force came out from the arrow and shook Ning Fan's palm open. It flew out of Ning Fan's hand and flew up again. Ning Fan's body swayed as he was shaken by the huge force. He took 10 steps back in the cave. His eyes turned solemn. When he opened his palm was scorched and emitted a foul stench. I can't even hold this arrow with my intermediate truth-crossing realm cultivation base. Ning Fan's eyes widened. Seeing that Ning Fan dared to hold the arrow with his bare hands, the Candlebow old man was slightly startled. Then he shook his head and sneered. The 6-colored Joss flame arrow's slaughter chi was too strong. Even a thought-breaking old monster would be burned by the Joss flame of slaughter if he touched this arrow. Even he, the bow spirit who refined this arrow, didn't dare to touch it. This arrow was extremely powerful. It could kill an early thought-breaking realm expert in one shot. However, one needed to be qualified to control this arrow. Not everyone had the qualifications to control this extremely special Joss flame arrow. In the Candlebow old man's eyes, only his first master, ancestral dragon Zhu Li, had the qualifications. Master, are you all right? What? You were burned by the Joss flame arrow. I saw it with my own eyes and my heart ached. Damn it. Little Bao really deserves to die. I forgot to remind Master that this arrow can't be touched casually. With Master's intermediate truth-crossing realm cultivation base, only by taking a pill that can resist the slaughter chi can you touch this arrow. Little Bao old man's previous master said that one needs to be qualified to control this arrow. The Candlebow old man's face was full of worry, as if he was extremely concerned about Ning Fan. However, in his heart, he was gloating. Naturally, he was gloating because Ning Fan overestimated his own strength. He tried to use his intermediate truth-crossing realm cultivation base to hold the arrow with his bare hands. In the end, he brought disgrace upon himself and got burned by the arrow. This fiend is really overestimating himself. His cultivation base is only at the middle stage of Dujin stage, but it is like holding the 6-colored incense arrow. Even the former master only dared to hold the arrow with his hand after he cultivated to the 10,000 ancient immortal venerable realm. The previous master said that in order to control this arrow, cultivation base alone isn't enough. He also needs a trace of enlightenment. It seems that only after understanding something, would one have the qualifications to completely control this arrow. Otherwise, even if he borrowed the power of the pill to forcibly control this arrow, he would only be able to unleash a small portion of the arrow's power. What a pity! This malefic star doesn't seem to have this qualification. While the candle-bow old man was gloating, Ning Fan was thinking about the word qualification in his words. Is there still a need for qualification to control this arrow? Ning Fan activated the star art. The burn on his palm was immediately healed under the starlight. The ghost face faintly revealed a sense of excitement. Baleful qi gradually surged out from his body. Ning Fan raised his hand again and grabbed the Joss flame arrow that was hovering above him. The arrow was directly pulled into his hand. As soon as the arrow entered his hand, it emitted a huge force, trying to break free from Ning Fan's palm. The huge force caused Ning Fan to take a few steps back before he stabilized his body. His eyes were filled with determination. He would never let go of the arrow. This time, he retreated 9 steps in a row. With each step, he left an inch-deep footprint on the stone floor of the immortal's cave. His chi was slightly messy, but this time, the arrow didn't break free from his palm. His hand wasn't burned at all. This malefic star actually used his Duzhen cultivation to hold the 6-colored Joss flame arrow without any injuries. The candle-bow old man's heart pounded in disbelief. Even his former master couldn't hold the 6-colored Joss flame arrow without any external force before his cultivation base reached the eternal immortal venerable realm. However, Ning Fan was able to do it. However, it seemed different from when his master was controlling the arrow. Could it be that this malefic star is also qualified to control the arrow like my former master? My former master relied on the power of the Tao law of arrow to control the arrow. Could it be that this malefic star also has some understanding of the Tao law of arrow? But that can't be right. My former master said that if he had some understanding of the Tao law of arrow, he wouldn't be repelled by the arrow and wouldn't retreat. With his eyesight, he couldn't see that Ning Fan was using the power of the innate ghost face to forcefully suppress the power of the Joss flame arrow. Therefore, he was puzzled by Ning Fan's action of taking 9 steps back after receiving the Joss flame arrow without any injuries. Ning Fan looked at the 6-colored Joss flame arrow in his palm. His eyes were filled with seriousness and a trace of confusion. 9 steps. I have clearly used the power of the innate ghost face to suppress the power of the Joss flame arrow, but I was still repelled 9 steps. The reason why I was repelled wasn't because I didn't have enough strength, but because the arrow is rejecting me. The reason why it rejected me seems to be related to the Tao law. If I can't truly subdue this arrow, the power of the arrow will be greatly weakened. Ning Fan remained silent for a moment. He withdrew the power of the ghost face that was suppressing the 6-colored Joss flame arrow. Instantly, he felt a burning sensation on his palm. He had no choice but to let go of the arrow, allowing it to fly again. The power of this arrow was indeed not weak. He had personally experienced the power of this arrow. It shouldn't be a lie that this arrow could kill an early thought fragmentation cultivator with a single shot. This arrow was extraordinary. Moreover, it was only a 6-colored Joss flame arrow. If it was a 7-colored Joss flame arrow, how powerful would it be? It shouldn't be a lie that this arrow could severely injure an ordinary eternal immortal venerable with a single shot. However, Ning Fan had also personally felt that the power of this arrow could only be used to kill a specific target. This arrow was condensed from the Joss flame of massacre. The Joss flame of massacre originated from the hatred of countless dead barbarians. The target of their hatred wasn't only Fan Lianxiu, but also all the enemies who intended to harm the barbarians. This kind of hatred was the hatred of the extermination of the barbarians. It was also a deep attachment to the barbarians. Therefore, the scope of their hatred was wider. From this Joss flame arrow, Ning Fan could feel a will. Anyone who goes against the barbarians, no matter who they are, is the enemy of this arrow. Those who weren't the enemy of the barbarians wouldn't suffer too much damage even if they were hit by this arrow. This was the limitation of the Joss flame of massacre. Unless it was a cultivator who cultivated the Tao of hatred, no one would be able to ignore this limitation and use this arrow to kill innocent people. Now that the desolate land was in a great calamity, the barbarians had a lot of enemies. There were demon cultivators, savage beasts, and ancient statues of their ancestors. All of them were slaughtering the barbarians unscrupulously. Therefore, in the desolate land, this arrow could be used to kill savage beasts, demon cultivators, and even the barbarian ancestors of the past. Although it had its limitations, it was still very useful. Candle bow, your 6-colored arrow is very useful. I will let you devour the blood bow. After you devour the blood bow, you can then refine the 7-colored arrow. I want to comprehend this arrow here. Before you devour the blood bow, don't disturb me. After handing the blood bow spirit to Candle Bow, Ning Fan sat cross-legged in the cave dwelling and closed his eyes to meditate. What he was meditating on was naturally the qualification to control the arrow. Seeing that Ning Fan had entered the state of comprehension, Candle Bow naturally didn't dare to disturb him. The current him was already overjoyed when he heard Ning Fan asking him to devour the blood bow. He only wanted to devour the blood bow as soon as possible and was not interested in Ning Fan's matters at all. He chuckled and walked towards Ning Fan step by step. He picked up the blood bow and revealed an extremely wretched expression. He stuck out his tongue and licked the body of the blood bow, as if he was enjoying it very much. Every time he licked it, the spiritual energy of the blood bow would decrease a little and flow into his body. He did not dare to make too loud a sound as he was afraid that Ning Fan would scold him. The process was too beautiful. Fortunately, Ning Fan closed his eyes to meditate and did not look at it. Otherwise, he would probably be disgusted. The devouring process lasted for nearly 3 days. After the devouring was completed, the chi of Candle Bow had increased by a lot. The grade of the bow spirit had obviously improved. Even though there was still a huge gap between it and the innate realm, its grade was already close to the peak of the innate realm. Feeling that the grade of its bow spirit had greatly improved, Candle Bow was so happy that it could not close its mouth. As for the blood bow, it had already been devoured by Candle Bow until not even its bones were left. During the 3 days when Candle Bow devoured the blood bow, Ning Fan had been sitting in the cave dwelling with his eyes closed. During these 3 days, Ning Fan did not move at all. He had been meditating on something with his eyes closed. On the first day, his body was flowing with the power of Intent Realm. What he was comprehending was the arrow Intent. Intent Realm was the embryonic form of the Great Tao. It was the power that a first-step cultivator would comprehend in their lifetime. With Ning Fan's mid-true crossing realm cultivation base, it was not difficult for him to comprehend the arrow Intent Realm. As time went by, the power of the arrow intent continued to increase. When the second day arrived, the power of the arrow intent had completely turned into the power of the Tao of Arrow. On the second day, Ning Fan was comprehending the Tao of Arrow. The Tao of Arrow in Ning Fan's eyes was to never turn back once the bow is drawn. The word arrow referred to moving forward with an indomitable will and having no regrets once the bow is drawn. Ning Fan's Tao was about persistence. The Tao of Arrow also had some traces of Tao persistence. Therefore, it was not difficult for him to comprehend it. It was Ning Fan's first time calming himself down to comprehend the Tao of Arrow. It was also the first time he felt that his personality and the Tao of Arrow were so compatible. On the third day, the power of the Tao of Arrow was still flowing in his body. However, within that power, there was gradually something that he could not explain. His entire body seemed to have turned into an arrow that would never turn back once the bow is drawn. The laws of the Tao of Arrow constantly converged in his surroundings. Those were the laws of the Tao of Arrow that existed between heaven and earth. He could sense them, but he could not control them. The current me still doesn't have the qualifications to command the arrows. However, there will be a day. On the third day, Ning Fan opened his eyes and stood up. He reached out to grab the 6-colored arrow again. This time, he only took 6 steps back. He did not say anything else. He kept the 6-colored arrow and his eyes swept across Candle Bow at the side. Seeing that Candle Bow had successfully devoured the blood bow and its grade had greatly improved, he ordered it to forge the 7-colored arrow. Don't worry, master. Little Bao has already devoured the blood bao and its strength has improved tremendously. The success rate of forging the 7-colored arrow is at least 20%. Master still has so much Joss flames of slaughter. Little Bao can forge at least 5 7-colored arrows. After I forge the 7-colored arrows, can Master give that gourd? Candle Bao looked at the purple gourd with a covetous gaze. It licked its lips and was still thinking about the gourd. We'll talk about the gourd after you forge the 7-colored arrow. Hurry up and forge the arrow. Ning Fan's eyes darkened. Candle Bao immediately shut its mouth and began to forge the 7-colored arrow eagerly. His expression was extremely conceited, as if it was a piece of cake for him to forge the 7-colored arrow. Soon, however, Candle Bao could no longer feel happy. Forging the 7-colored arrow was to forge one more color on the basis of the 6-colored arrow. Before devouring the blood bao, the success rate of forging the 7-colored arrow was about 10%. After devouring the blood bao, the success rate had increased to 20%. According to the success rate, 20% meant that 1 out of 5 arrows would succeed. The grade of the arrows that failed would stop at the 6-colored grade. Unfortunately, Candle Bao's luck seemed to be bad today. He failed 9 arrows in a row and barely managed to forge the first 7-colored arrow. After that, he failed another 6 times and only managed to forge the second 7-colored arrow. After that, he failed another 8 times and barely managed to forge the third arrow. Before he could forge the fourth arrow, the Joss flames of slaughter in the gourd had already been used up. Is this the 20% success rate that you mentioned? Didn't you say that you can forge at least 5 7-colored arrows? Ning Fan's cold eyes swept across Candle Bao. Immediately, Candle Bao was drenched in cold sweat. He kept explaining the reason for his bad luck today. Ning Fan just let out a cold snort and did not comment on his explanation. As a matter of fact, with Ning Fan's experience, he could clearly see that the reason why Candle Bao failed so much today was because of his mentality. This fellow's temperament was really too bad. After devouring the blood bao, his grade rose tremendously and he became complacent. That was why he made so many mistakes during the forging process. To put it bluntly, this fellow deserved to be scolded. He could not be praised or allowed to be complacent. Ning Fan turned his head and looked at the tens of incense arrows that were hovering in the cave. From the beginning to the end, Candle Bao had forged a total of 24 6-colored arrows and 3 7-colored arrows. The power of the 6-colored arrow could kill an early thought fragmentation realm expert with a single arrow. In the current desolate world, the power that forbids immortals was rampant. Perhaps no one below the immortal venerable realm could withstand the destructive power of a 6-colored arrow. The power of the 7-colored arrow could severely injure an ancient immortal venerable. With 3 7-colored arrows in hand, even if he encounters old ancestor poisonous dragon or the ancient statue of a certain barbaric ancestor, Ning Fan would not be afraid. With these arrows, Ning Fan finally had the power to protect himself in the desolate world. Looking at the Joss flame arrows, Ning Fan felt like he could see the barbarians kowtowing to him, begging him to take revenge for them. The targets of their revenge were, of course, the murderers who caused them to end up like this. These arrows will eventually come in handy. With a wave of his hand, Ning Fan sealed all the Joss flame arrows and kept them in his storage pouch. Seeing that Ning Fan did not blame him for his failure, Candle Bao felt relieved. Then he began to plan for Ning Fan's innate gourd. Master, do you need my help to nourish that gourd of yours? If you do, I'm willing to do my best to help you. Master, look at this gourd. No matter how I look at it, it looks like a good seed for forging bows. It's really a waste of God's gift if you don't let me nourish it. Master, please give me a chance to repay you. Let me help you nourish this gourd. Old Man Candle Bao pleaded bitterly just to get Ning Fan's purple gourd to give him a chance to break the seal. Just as Ning Fan was about to say something, his eyes suddenly turned grim as if he had sensed something. The rain intent in his eyes flashed. His gaze seemed to have directly penetrated the profound Een world and saw what was happening outside the world. You want the gourd? Sure. I'll give you a chance to perform. Kill all the enemies who come to invade us. What's the harm in lending this gourd to you? Ning Fan pointed at Candle Bao with his index finger. Candle Bao's body trembled and immediately turned back into the form of a dragon-horned longbow. Leaving the gourd in the immortal's cave, Ning Fan held the longbow and stepped out of the profound Yin world. Even though he was separated by the profound Yin world, he could still sense two traces of killing intent rushing towards him from the outside world. Those two traces of killing intent originated from two ancient statues. The statue of the third-generation barbaric ancestor, Fan Jie. The statue of the fifth-generation barbaric ancestor, Fan Xianding. The chi of that female venerated immortal is on this broken continent. Finally, I found her. In the void, the two ancient giants stepped on the void and headed towards the broken continent. When Mounz and the others who were controlling the flying continent saw the two giants approaching them with monstrous auras, they were all shocked. If they were not mistaken, the two ancient statues that were approaching them were extremely similar to the ancient statues of the sixth-generation barbaric ancestor that they encountered a few days ago. Let's wash up and go to sleep. Chapter 905. Two ancient statue giants stepped on the void and approached the shattered continent. One of them was the statue of the third-generation barbarian ancestor, while the other was the statue of the fifth-generation barbarian ancestor. Their auras were as vast as the ancient immortal venerables. The statue of the third-generation barbarian ancestor had a bloodthirsty expression on its face. Tens of thousands of blood banners were circling around its body. The cries of a young girl could be heard coming from the banners. Those blood banners were his divine abilities. The statue of the fifth-generation barbarian ancestor's eyes were empty and cold. Every time it took a step, a burning footprint would appear in the void. Its Tao was fire. The aura of the female immortal venerables is on this broken continent. Finally, we found her. The statue of the third-generation barbarian ancestor smiled cruelly. It had been 2 days since he and the fifth-generation barbarian ancestor chased after Venerable's wise words. This girl is full of primordial Yin. The blood of her primordial Yin is like a holy healing item to us. Fifth-generation barbarian ancestor, please help me. I can fight alone in this battle. It won't be difficult for me to take down this girl. The third-generation barbarian ancestor stomped on the void. His stone body immediately let out a loud rumbling sound and shrunk bit by bit. His stone body was originally as large as the sky. But now, it had returned to the size of a normal person. However, his body was still made of stone and was glowing with an evil blood-red light. There were still two heads, one crying and the other laughing. Seeing this, the fifth-generation barbarian ancestor also turned smaller. He squinted his eyes and looked at the third-generation barbarian ancestor. Do you really not need my help? It's not a good thing to underestimate the enemy. You know that I'm an expert in the art of tracking. I have a feeling that the statue of the sixth-generation barbarian ancestor has been destroyed by someone. Even his blood soul has been destroyed. I don't know why, but I can sense the aura of death left by the sixth-generation barbarian ancestor on this broken continent. Perhaps, the sixth-generation barbarian ancestor's blood soul has been destroyed by someone on this broken continent. What did you say? You sense that Fan Lianxiu's blood soul has been destroyed? Hearing this, the third-generation barbarian ancestor was shocked. Fifth forefather, oh fifth forefather, you must have sensed wrongly. If you say that Fan Lianxiu's ancient statue body was destroyed, this old man would still believe it. After all, any slightly more powerful immortal venerable would have a way to destroy my ancient statue body. However, the blood soul in the ancient statue could not be killed by anyone. There are only a handful of powers that can harm us blood souls. In the current wildlands, the strongest cultivators are only some immortal venerables. Their cultivation is limited, so it's impossible for them to harm us blood souls. Don't worry. Just stay at the side and help me. No one on this broken continent is a match for me. Although that human race female venerable is an immortal venerable, she is still a woman. I have many ways to deal with women. The third patriarch grinned and took a step forward, disappearing from where he stood. He was still extremely far away from the shattered continent, but with this one step, he instantly appeared in front of it. The third ancestor pointed her finger forward, and the 10,000 blood banners circling around her immediately whistled out. They all flew up and began to sway in the void. Red sand suddenly appeared in the void. As the red sand spread out, it condensed into a giant, withered hand that pushed at the shattered continent. The force of the push extinguished all the light emitting from the shattered continent, causing it to stop floating in the void. At the same time, an extremely evil murderous intent spread out from the third patriarch's body and pressed down on the shattered continent. I am the third-generation barbarian ancestor, Fan Ku. Today, all the living beings on this broken continent will become my food. No one can escape. The voice was as powerful as a primordial celestial venerable. It was as cold as the call of the dead from hell, causing the people on the shattered continent to exclaim. No one expected to encounter an enemy with the strength of a primordial celestial venerable here. A moment later, the crowd was even more astonished. This was because they realized that it was not one primordial celestial venerable that attacked them, but two. After the third progenitor appeared, the fifth progenitor also appeared. His aura was shocking. He had reached the primordial celestial venerable level. The enemies are primordial celestial venerables, and there are two of them. Some cultivators exclaimed. The third progenitor, Fan Ku, and the fifth progenitor, Fan Xianding. There's no mistake. Both of them are the ancestors of the barbarian race, just like the sixth progenitor. Many barbarians exclaimed. It was their ancestors who had descended, but there was no joy or belief in the barbarians' eyes. There was only fear, anger, unwillingness, and confusion. The third progenitor's words were very clear. The barbarians here were only food for the third progenitor. That was all food. What a sorrowful term. The barbarians were only food in the eyes of the barbarian ancestors. Fortunately, they had already been disappointed once. Although there was still sorrow in their hearts when they heard the same words, the sorrow had faded away. Now they had a new belief. Compared to the barbarian ancestors, they were more willing to believe in a foreign cultivator named Zhao Jian. Interesting. This is extremely interesting. There are human cultivators, savage beasts, and barbarians here. What kind of combination is this? What puzzles me the most is that the barbarians are looking at me with no respect at all. The savage beasts are also looking at me with murderous intent. Hee hee, what a rude gaze. You barbarians, why aren't you kneeling when you see me? Kneel for me. The third progenitor retracted her smile and snorted coldly. A pressure that came from her bloodline immediately pressed down on the entire broken continent. The human cultivators couldn't feel the pressure, but as savage beasts and barbarians, they had to submit under the pressure of the bloodline. The blood of the 200,000 savage beasts was boiling. Under the pressure of the third progenitor's bloodline, all of them began to tremble and prostrate on the ground. The millions of barbarians immediately knelt on the ground when they were suppressed by the pressure of the bloodline. The faces of these barbarians were filled with unwillingness. They were unwilling to kneel. With the collapse of their belief, they would rather die than kneel to the third progenitor. However, kneeling or not kneeling was not up to them. Under the pressure of the third progenitor's bloodline, none of the barbarians dared to defy her, even if they were unwilling. But why must we kneel to such an ancestor? I'm not willing, I'm not willing. Zhao Dai tried her best to straighten her knees, unwilling to kneel. She bit her lips until blood trickled down. She was unwilling. She would rather die than kneel to an evil ancestor who treated the barbarians like dogs. However, under the pressure, a weak person like her was like a withered leaf in the wind. She wobbled and was about to kneel on the ground. Suddenly, Immortal Lowly stretched out her small hand and patted Zhao Dai's back. With that pat, a cool lightning force immediately flowed into Zhao Dai's body, dispersing the pressure on her body. Zhao Dai heaved a sigh of relief and thanked Immortal Lowly. Thank you, Xian Xian. Hee hee, no need to be so polite. Immortal lowly smiled and took a bite of the lightning pill. Then she raised her head and looked at the third progenitor and the fifth progenitor. She only lost her memory, but she wasn't a fool. How could she not see that the two barbarian ancestors were great enemies? She didn't understand what the barbarian ancestors meant, but she could see that the two barbarian ancestors were extremely similar to Fan Li and Xiao. The bodies of these two old men are made of stone. Inside the stone, there's a blood soul. Just like that old man blood soul. I can fight one of these old men, but I might not be able to defeat two of them. Should I call Daddy for help? No. Daddy is in seclusion now. I can't disturb him. Forget it, I'll fight two of them alone. Immortal Lowly was about to make a move when she suddenly exclaimed softly. At the same time, Immortal Concubine Zhang Yu, Earth Demon and Iron Crow Taoist also raised their heads and looked at an empty void. At that place, an enchanting female cultivator in a pink dress appeared slowly. Her pretty face was covered in frost. It was Venerable Miao Yen. Other than the four of them, no one else knew how Venerable Miao Yen appeared. Venerable Miao Yen was originally watching the scene outside through the window, but now, she had no choice but to make a move. She had been unconscious for 3 days and only woke up when she was taking a bath. Not long after she woke up, she sensed 2 ancient statues approaching from afar. If Venerable Miao Yan's senses weren't wrong, the reason why the 2 of them came here was to track down her aura. These 2 are the ancient statues. With just a glance, she recognized the 3rd and 5th ancestors. They were the ancient statues summoned by Patriarch Poisonous Dragon. She learned many things from the servant girl Tong. She knew that there was an ancient statue of the 6th barbaric ancestor on this broken continent. With her wisdom and experience of guarding the wildlands for many years, she immediately understood what was going on when she heard the 3rd ancestor's name. What Patriarch Poisonous Dragon summoned back then was probably all the ancient statues of the 7th barbaric ancestor in the history of the barbarians. The rotation of the ancient statues was an indispensable part of the blood sacrifice in the wildlands. If they could destroy the ancient statues, they could slightly hinder the demon's plan. Fellow Taoist Zhao Jian and his daughter have already destroyed the 6th ancestor's ancient statue. The 2 statues in front of us are the 3rd ancestor and the 5th ancestor. My injuries are very serious. Although I've recovered some of my strength during the 3 days I was unconscious, it's still far from enough to fight against an immortal venerable ancient statue, let alone 2 of them. When I fought against Du Longzi in the past, I suffered a crushing defeat in the hands of that ancient statue. That ancient statue was much stronger than the 2 statues in front of us. It's very difficult for me to fight against the 2 of them now. Should I ask for fellow Taoist Zhao Jian's help? Venerated Miao Yen had already scanned the broken continent with her spirit sense for more than 10 times. However, she could not find Ning Fan at all. According to Tong, Ning Fan seemed to be in seclusion at this moment. She walked gracefully. Every time she stepped on the void, a ray of purple starlight would be embellished in the void. Her brows were tightly knitted together as she walked towards the 3rd and 5th ancestors. The 2 of them had come for her. She was destined to not be able to stay out of today's matter. Also, she had never planned to stay out of it. 3rd ancestor Fan Jie, 5th ancestor Fan Xianding. I'm very curious about why the barbarian ancestors who had died in the ancient times were resurrected. What I'm more curious about is why the barbarian race has always been at odds with the foreign races. Why are you helping the demons to sacrifice the wildlands? Can the 2 of you answer my doubts? The 5th ancestor only smiled coldly in response to venerated Miao Yan's question. He did not intend to answer her. The 3rd ancestor's eyes, on the other hand, were filled with evil intent. He scanned venerated Miao Yan's body again and again. His gaze lingered on her voluptuous body and he licked his lips greedily. He was originally a cultivator of the Black Evil tribe. When he was still a barbarian ancestor, he would ask the barbarian tribes to offer countless young girls to him every year. Ever since he fell, he had not touched a woman for many years. Venerated Miao Yen, who was standing before him, was undoubtedly a peerless beauty. Just a glance at him was enough to make his heart itch. Venerated Miao Yan's primordial yin was even more abundant. To him, she was the best human cauldron. He wished that he could immediately take her down, press her under his body and ravage her mercilessly. He wanted to enjoy the sight of her crying under his body. Not bad. Not bad at all. What a great venerated immortal human cauldron. This cauldron is mine. Barbarian art, barbarian voice of 6 desires. The third ancestor's figure flashed and he directly dashed towards venerated Miao Yan. He raised his finger and pointed at the 10,000 blood flags in the void. Immediately, the enchanting and seductive voices of countless young girls came from those blood flags. The voice was invisible, but it instantly enveloped venerated Miao Yan. Venerated Miao Yan saw the third ancestor rushing towards her and was about to resist. However, the devilish voice suddenly entered her ears. Her pretty face immediately turned abnormally red and her blood flowed in the opposite direction. For a moment, the flow of magic power in her body slowed down by more than 30%. She could not help but reveal a shocked and angry expression. The third ancestor actually used a sound enchantment technique on her. She was already seriously injured, and now that she was struck by the enchantment technique, it was even more disadvantageous for her to fight against the third ancestor. She reluctantly raised her finger and bid it to draw in the void, drawing lines of purple starlight. The starlight intertwined and formed a formation. Suddenly, a purple soft sword shot out from the formation and slashed towards the third ancestor like a soft snake. The power of this sword is not enough to injure me at all. The third ancestor sneered slightly. His forward momentum did not slow down. He opened his mouth and spat out a lightning bolt that directly broke the soft sword. Immediately, his expression changed slightly. After the soft sword was broken, its power did not decrease but increased instead. It split into 2 and slashed towards his left and right. He had to stop his forward momentum and focus on dealing with the 2 swords. He thought that the sword seemed to have the ability to split and multiply. If that was the case, he could not casually destroy the sword. Barbarian technique, barbarian fish swallows the sea. The third ancestor's hand seal changed and a giant barbarian fish shadow immediately appeared between heaven and earth. It directly swallowed the 2 sword shadows into its stomach. This technique was a secret technique passed down by the barbarian tribes since ancient times. As long as one's cultivation level was high enough, this technique could swallow everything in the world. The 2 sword shadows were swallowed by the barbarian fish, and immediately disappeared along with the gradually dimming fish shadows, without the slightest trace of power. Seeing this, venerated Miao Yan once again bit her finger and pointed in the void 72 times at lightning speed. In the void, 72 ancient stone pillars immediately rose. They formed an array with each other and trapped the third ancestor in the array. As soon as the third ancestor was trapped, the 72 stone pillars immediately lit up with countless runes and emitted an extremely ferocious killing intent. The fifth ancestor's expression changed slightly. He wanted to help the third ancestor break the array but was stopped by the third ancestor. It's just a small array, I can break it with a raise of my hand. Fifth ancestor, don't even think about doing anything. My name is Fan Xie. The word, Xie, is the root of my divine power. You can't stop me. Abolish the 100 schools of thought and respect the barbarian technique alone. The third ancestor put his palms together and a giant scarlet shadow appeared behind him. The giant shadow suddenly raised its hand and pointed a finger at the 72 stone pillars. With just one finger, the 72 stone pillars turned into ashes in an instant. Then, it pointed at venerated Miao Yan. Venerated Miao Yan's primordial spirit immediately felt a sharp pain and showed signs of collapsing. This finger could destroy all divine powers apart from the barbarian technique and kill all non-barbarian cultivators. This move of yours is too powerful. This sister has yet to recover from her injuries and can't take this move. Let's switch. With a flash of lightning, Immortal Loli instantly appeared in front of venerated Miao Yan. She pressed her small hand forward and an incomparably huge silver lightning diagram appeared in front of her. In the lightning diagram, the lightning chariot that was close to level 10 slowly appeared and fired a cannon. The chilling power of dark thunder immediately made the third ancestor's heart shudder. The divine power of the giant Scarlet Shadow's finger was directly destroyed by the lightning chariot's thunder cannon. The thunder cannon did not lose its momentum and directly attacked the third ancestor. Not good. Fifth ancestor, help me resist this cannon. The third ancestor was shocked. He flew back and shouted coldly. The fifth ancestor was also shocked. The thunder cannon's attack gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. It was as if even their ancient statue bodies that were comparable to venerated immortals couldn't take this cannon. There was no need for the third ancestor to ask for help. He had already planned to help from the side. The fifth ancestor pointed his index finger forward and suddenly, a flame giant appeared in front of him and knelt down in front of the thunder cannon. This was the divine power that the fifth ancestor was most proficient in, the fire worship technique. As he kowtowed, a giant flame palm appeared in front of the thunder cannon and directly grabbed at the cannon. The third ancestor who was retreating saw the fifth ancestor's attack and no longer retreated. He controlled the tens of thousands of blood banners and turned them into one banner. With the banner in his hand, the third ancestor's aura changed. He waved the banner and the rolling red sand immediately rolled towards the cannon. Under the bombardment of the three divine powers, the world there cracked from the middle and showed signs of collapsing. The result of the collision was that the thunder cannon did not gain any advantage and neither of the two barbaric ancestors gained any advantage. What a powerful lightning chariot! This little girl is quite amazing. The third ancestor and the fifth ancestor glanced at Immortal Lowly and were secretly shocked. Venerated Miao Yen smiled gratefully at Immortal Lowly. She had already heard about Immortal Lowly's formidable battle achievements from Tong Air. Thus, she was not too surprised. However, she was very curious about Immortal Lowly's identity. She was actually able to display the secret chariot technique of the Extreme Lightning Palace to a level that was close to the 10th grade. Immortal Lowly was Ning Fan's daughter. What was Ning Fan's background? As expected, it's very difficult for me to gain any advantage when these two old men join hands. Immortal Lowly's small face was slightly pale. To her, using the lightning chariot that was close to the 10th grade was still a huge burden. The consumption of the cannon was not small. It would be fine if she could kill an ancient statue in one shot. However, it was too disadvantageous for her to not gain any advantage from the cannon. Even though this little girl's lightning chariot is powerful, it seems to be a little difficult for her to activate it. Her pale face is the proof. I don't think she can use such a powerful lightning chariot for too many times. The fifth ancestor noticed Immortal Lowly's expression and sneered. That's right. She's just a little girl. There's nothing to be afraid of. The third ancestor calmed herself down and chuckled. This little girl's skin is very beautiful. Even though her bones have yet to grow, if I pluck her, perhaps, it'll be a different kind of taste. This cauldron is very good. Let's take it as well. Barbarian technique, slave technique. The third ancestor suddenly raised the blood banner in her hand to the sky. As the banner swayed, the stone statue of a barbarian girl immediately appeared in the void. The girl on the stone statue was completely naked. Her expression was charming and her eyes had a magical power that could captivate one's soul. In the beginning, there was only one stone statue. Then the second, the third. In just a few breaths' time, millions of stone statues of young girls had appeared in the sky. At this moment, all the women, be they cultivators or barbarians, had their bodies petrified. This technique seemed to be able to turn any woman whose cultivation base was lower than the third ancestor into a stone statue and become her slave. This technique was specially used to restrain the female cultivators in the world. Not good. Venerable Miao Yan's beautiful face was filled with shock. She realized that the moment the stone statues of young girls appeared, her body stiffened and she couldn't move. The area below her ankles had been petrified and the petrification was spreading upwards bit by bit. She couldn't move or resist it. Immortal Loli's face was also filled with shock. Her body also began to petrify. She couldn't resist the petrification even though she was a woman. Fairy Cold Dance, Zhaodai, Lu Yen, Tong Er, each of the women showed signs of petrification. Even immortal concubine Zhang Yu was petrified bit by bit. She wanted to cry but no tears came out. She wanted to cry but no tears came out. She really wanted to ask the heavens what kind of sin she had committed. Ever since she followed Ning Fan, she had never had a moment of peace. Wherever she went, there would be countless dangers. She even encountered such an evil slave technique. The slave technique was definitely a famous bewitching technique in ancient times. Other than an expert in bewitching techniques like Great Emperor Ancient Chaos, perhaps no one could create a bewitching technique that was more powerful than this technique. The third ancestor's ability is too powerful. It's especially effective against female cultivators. Is there any male cultivator here who can fight against them? Countless cultivators exclaimed. Among the male cultivators on the Broken Continent, Mounz and the other 3 Broken Thoughts were probably the strongest. Before Earth Devil and Taoist Iron Crow recovered their strength, they would be ranked behind them. Mounz and the other 3 human Broken Thoughts expressions changed drastically. They knew very well how strong they were. All of them knew that even if they combined the strength of all the human male cultivators here, they would still not be a match for the 2 barbarian ancestors. The strongest male cultivator here was undoubtedly Ning Fan. Perhaps only he had the strength to fight against the 2 barbarian ancestors. However, Ning Fan was still in seclusion and had yet to show himself. Fellow Taoist Zhao Jian, quickly come out of seclusion. Now isn't the time to go into seclusion. If you don't come out now, all of us will be in big trouble. Mounz and the others were secretly anxious, but the 3rd ancestor's face was filled with a complacent smile. His spirit sense scanned the Broken Continent again and again. There were only 2 people who could pose a threat to him in this place. One was Immortal Loli and the other was venerated Immortal Miao Yen. Both of them were currently immobilized by his ability. As for the rest of the people here, none of them was worthy of his attention. 5th ancestor. After I subdue all the women here, you will kill all the men here. Kill these wild beasts as well. The 3rd ancestor snorted disdainfully. His figure flashed and appeared in front of venerated Immortal Miao Yen and Immortal Loli. Then he pointed his index finger forward. A scarlet rune coiled around the tip of his finger. It was the slave talisman. If he planted this talisman into venerated Immortal Miao Yen and Immortal Loli's bodies, the 2 of them would never be able to betray him for the rest of their lives. Of course, he did not need their loyalty. What he needed was the primordial in their bodies. That was all. It's over. Just as the 3rd ancestor finished his cold words, his expression changed drastically and he retreated immediately. However, at this moment, a dazzling 7-colored light appeared in the sky for some reason. Once the 7-colored light appeared, it immediately closed in on the 3rd ancestor. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to see what was inside the 7-colored light. Only a few people could clearly see the figure inside the 7-colored light. It was a cold-looking young man with a dragon horn in his hand. He had a ghostly face and silver hair. His body was surrounded by a red glow and his evil chi was several times stronger than the 3rd ancestor's. There were a total of 27 arrow shadows hovering around the young man. Some of them were 6-colored, while others were 7-colored. When the arrow shadows merged together, the 3rd ancestor did not dare to face their ferocious aura. His appearance caused the originally furious Immortal Loli to immediately reveal an excited smile. His appearance shocked venerated Immortal Miao Yen. She recognized his aura. It was very similar to the aura of a junior that she had saved in the past. His appearance put Zhao Dai at ease. It was as if as long as he was there, even if all 7 barbaric ancestors were present, they would not be a threat. His appearance caused the faces of the 3rd and 5th patriarchs to fall. After looking at him for a moment, they didn't say a word, but instead fled. He is Ning Fan. He has come. Father, quickly break this evil technique. Xian Xian is about to become a stone statue. Xian Xian is so scared. Immortal lowly giggled and said, without the slightest bit of fear. Chapter 906. Father, quickly break this evil technique. Xian Xian is about to become a stone statue. Xian Xian is so scared. Immortal lowly giggled and said, but she did not look scared at all. Of course, she was not afraid. As long as Ning Fan was around, she would never know what fear was. Ning Fan's eyes swept across the vast sky. When he saw Immortal Lowly and the other female cultivators gradually turning into stone, his eyes immediately turned cold. He did not reply, but anyone who was familiar with him would definitely be able to see that he was already angry. At this moment, on the shattered continent, be it cultivators or mortals, as long as they were women, they were all struck by the third progenitor's petrifying charm technique. More and more women turned into stone statues. Only female cultivators with slightly higher cultivation could slightly slow down the speed of petrification. However, even someone as strong as Venerable Miao Yen had half of her body petrified, let alone the others. The petrified woman would not die in a short period of time, but if the petrification charm spell was not broken as soon as possible, it was only a matter of time before she died. Ordinary methods could not break this petrification technique. Even Ning Fan, who was proficient in bewitching techniques, could not break this technique head-on due to his limited cultivation base. There was only one way to get rid of the petrification on all the women in the shortest time possible. That was to kill the person who had cast the technique. Even though Ning Fan had always been in the profound Yin world, he had already left behind a spiritual mark of the reverse spirit technique on the broken continent in the outside world. As soon as he appeared, a reversed spirit mark turned into a stream of light and flew out from the shattered continent. It flew in front of him and was swallowed by him. The moment Ning Fan swallowed the imprint, scenes of the third ancestor and fifth ancestor attacking him appeared in his sea of consciousness. In the blink of an eye, he understood everything that had happened here. Third ancestor Fan Ku. Fifth ancestor Fan Xianding. The invading enemies were two ancestors of the barbarians in history. In the past, the sixth ancestor, Fan Lianxiu, had also tried to invade them. In the end, he was killed by Ning Fan. When the sixth ancestor saw Ning Fan, his first reaction was to run away. As for the third ancestor and the fifth ancestor in front of him, their first reaction when they saw Ning Fan was still to run away. The two barbaric ancestors had sharp eyesight. How could they not flee when they felt a bone-chilling sense of danger from Ning Fan? In the eyes of the cultivators and barbarians, this scene immediately had an uplifting effect. Look, it's Immortal Master Zhao. Immortal Master Zhao has come to save us. Once he arrives, even the barbarian ancestor has to flee. The barbarians cried tears of joy. It's Senior Zhao. The cultivators excitedly cheered. Fellow Taoist Zhao is finally here. Mounz and the other three Broken Thought Realm ancestors sucked in a cold breath. They were happy about Ning Fan's arrival, but at the same time, they found it hard to believe that the two powerful barbaric ancestors would run away from Ning Fan without putting up a fight. The third ancestor and the fifth ancestor, who could even easily trap venerated Miao Yen, actually fled as soon as they saw Ning Fan. This was simply unimaginable. The 200,000 wild beasts raised their necks and roared at the sky. Their expressions were filled with fervor. Following Ning Fan's arrival, the fear that the wild beasts had towards the two barbaric ancestors' bloodlines had actually decreased significantly. He's fellow Taoist Zhao Jian? This aura is so familiar. Could it be? Venerated Miao Yan's beautiful eyes widened in shock. She recognized Ning Fan's qi, but she found it hard to believe. That day when she was saved by Ning Fan, she fell into a coma and did not have the chance to meet him face to face. This was the first time she felt Ning Fan's qi. She still remembered that she had once helped a junior block the 7 Truths 7 Illusions arrow in the past. That junior's qi was extremely similar to Ning Fan's. Could they be the same person? What made venerated Miao Yen even more surprised was the dragon horn longbow in Ning Fan's hand. She was the only one in this place who could vaguely recognize this bow. If she was not mistaken, this bow should be the bow spirit of the true Dragon Clan's ancestral bow. However, she did not know why it was in Ning Fan's hands. The arrow light of the 27 incense sticks flew around his body. Ning Fan glanced at the third ancestor and the fifth ancestor who were fleeing in panic. He did not chase after them. There was no need for him to chase after them. His left hand tightened its grip on the candle bow. His knuckles cracked. Slowly, he raised the candle bow and waved his right hand at the void space. Immediately, a six-colored incense stick arrow appeared between his fingers. He knocked the arrow and drew the bow. The action of drawing the bow and knocking the arrow was completed in one go. It was almost completed in an instant. The bowstring of the bow was extremely heavy. With the Ning Fan's current cultivation base, he could only draw the bowstring by 1/3. Even so, as soon as the bowstring was drawn, the power of heaven and earth immediately gathered towards the arrowhead, making the six-colored light on the arrow even more dazzling. Faint dragon roars resounded between heaven and earth. On the body of the six-colored arrow, the shadows of 6 dragons with different colors could be vaguely seen. As soon as the shadows of the dragons appeared, the six-colored arrow immediately carried a trace of ancient aura force. It was as if there was a pair of invisible giant hands grabbing at the third ancestor. At this moment, Ning Fan loosened the bowstring and shot the arrow. He did not aim this arrow at the fifth ancestor but at the third ancestor. The speed of the arrow was too fast. Even an ancient immortal venerable would not be able to dodge it. It really is an arrow condensed from the Joss flames of slaughter. Seeing Ning Fan shoot the arrow at them without saying a word, the expressions of the third ancestor and the fifth ancestor changed. The reason why they fled as soon as they saw Ning Fan was because they were afraid of the 27 Joss flames of slaughter that were circling around Ning Fan. To be more precise, they were afraid of the 3 7-colored arrows among the 27 incense sticks. The power of the Joss flames of slaughter in those arrows was specifically targeted at the barbaric ancestor. Putting aside the 6-colored arrows, the 3 7-colored arrows were too ferocious. Even the third ancestor and the fifth ancestor sensed great danger from them and did not dare to face them head-on. Sensing that Ning Fan had drawn the bowstring, the third ancestor's eyes were immediately filled with fear. When he realized that the arrow was aimed at him, the shock on his face deepened. However, at the next moment, he realized that the arrow Ning Fan shot was not a 7-colored arrow but a 6-colored arrow that was slightly weaker. He could not help but snort coldly with a hint of disdain. This young man is really arrogant. Does he think that he can hurt me with just the 6-colored arrow in his hand? What I'm afraid of is not your 6-colored arrow but the 7-colored arrow. This arrow is nothing to be afraid of. Barbarian banners, get into formation and block this arrow for me. The third ancestor suddenly turned around and stopped running. The fifth ancestor also stopped running and looked at the incoming arrow with a cold smile. The third ancestor pointed his finger at the 6-colored arrow. Immediately, tens of thousands of blood banners appeared in the sky and overlapped with each other, forming tens of thousands of layers of barriers that blocked the incoming arrow. Even though the 6-colored arrow was fierce, its power was only enough to kill ordinary thought fragments. The arrow pierced through 3,000 layers of the blood banners before its power was exhausted and the body of the arrow collapsed. Seeing that the 6-colored arrow could not penetrate the blood banners and hurt him, the third ancestor snorted again with disdain. However, at the next moment, his expression changed drastically. After Ning Fan shot the arrow, he drew the bowstring again. This time, he shot 3 arrows at the same time. The 3 6-colored arrows merged into one. As soon as they were shot, the entire world was enveloped by the arrow intent of the 6-colored arrow. As the arrow shot out, it immediately pierced through the layers of blood banners. 3,000 layers, 6,000 layers, 9,000 layers. The 3 arrows pierced through the tens of thousands of blood banners and finally arrived in front of the third ancestor. A single 6-colored arrow might not be enough to break the defense of the blood banners, but 3 arrows at the same time were more than enough to do so. Seeing that the defense of the blood banners was broken, The third ancestor's eyes darkened. He sneered and raised his hand to grab the 3 six-colored arrows. From his point of view, the power of the 3 arrows was already at the end of its flight after breaking through the layers of blood banners. It was not worth mentioning. That was why he dared to grab the arrows with his hand. The speed of the incoming arrows had already been reduced. With the third ancestor's speed, he easily grabbed the 3 arrows. However, as soon as he grabbed the 6-colored arrows, his entire palm was burned by the Joss flame. He was not qualified to hold the arrows, and it was difficult for him to hold them directly. Under the intense pain, the third ancestor had no choice but to let go of the arrows. At the next moment, he felt a sharp pain on his shoulder. The remaining power of the 3 arrows pierced through his shoulder, leaving 3 thumb-sized bloody holes. 6 colored flames were burning around the bloody hole, eroding his body bit by bit. The flames were extremely strange, as if they contained a trace of samsara chi. Even with the third ancestor's abilities, he could not extinguish the flames. All he could do was temporarily suppress them so that the flames would not spread to his body. Damn it. This arrow actually contains a trace of samsara power. That's why the flames on the arrow can't be extinguished. The third ancestor was shocked. The power of the 6-colored arrows was not enough to severely injure him. However, the trace of samsara power that invaded his body was like maggots in his bones. It was extremely troublesome and difficult to get rid of it. Ning Fan frowned slightly when he saw that the 3 arrows had injured the third ancestor, but the injury was not serious. He drew the bow again. This time, he was not going to shoot the 6-colored arrows but the 7-colored arrows. With his current cultivation base, shooting 3 6-colored arrows at the same time was already his limit. He could not shoot 4 arrows at the same time. He had a clear understanding of this when he shot the 3 arrows at the same time. As for the 7-colored arrows, he could only shoot 1 arrow at a time at most. Moreover, it was not an easy task to shoot the 7-colored arrow. After shooting 4 6-colored arrows consecutively, he had already figured out the power of the 6-colored arrows. Next, he wanted to see the power of the 7-colored arrow. With the 7-colored arrow in his hand, he immediately felt a heavy pressure as if the heavens were pressing down on him. This time, it was obviously more strenuous for him to draw the bow than when he shot the 6-colored arrow. The 7-colored arrow was different from the 6-colored arrow. There were 7-inch-long grooves on the body of the arrow. In order to shoot the 7-colored arrow, he must first fill all 7 grooves. The moment he put the 7-colored arrow on the bowstring, he activated his magic power. His magic power immediately flowed into the first groove on the 7-colored arrow. The groove was like a bottomless pit. Even with Ning Fan's current magic power, he could only fill 1/10 of the groove. His magic power had been depleted, but he could not even fully light up the first of the 7 grooves. Inwardly, he was shocked by the consumption of the 7-colored arrow's magic power. He took a deep breath and began to crazily refine the 5 elemental spiritual items in his body. With the power of the great 5 elements physique, Ning Fan's magic power was replenished. Then he poured it into the 7-colored arrow like a tidal wave. The first groove was gradually filled up and lit up with the first colorful light. Then, the second groove was also filled up and lit up with the second colorful light. A moment later, the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grooves were lit up one after another. At the moment when the 7th groove was lit up, Ning Fan's entire body was covered with 7-colored flames as if he was burning. He seemed to have turned into a 7-colored fireman. He was holding a fire bow and a 7-colored fire arrow. He aimed at the third ancestor. All of a sudden, the third ancestor's expression changed drastically. He felt a chill down his spine. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his chest and a bloody hole appeared out of nowhere. After that, the 7-colored arrow pierced through the air and penetrated him through the bloody hole. The light of the arrow was too fast. It was so fast that he was already hit by the arrow when he only saw a ray of 7-colored light flashing by. Karma. Karma is reversed. First, there is the effect of being hit by the arrow. Then, there is the cause of drawing the bow. This bow is hard to dodge. The third ancestor covered the bloody hole in his chest with his left hand. His eyes were filled with disbelief. On his chest, the place that was pierced by the seven-colored arrow was burning with seven-colored flames that could not be extinguished. With his current cultivation base, he could not suppress the flames at all. It spread crazily to his entire body through his wound. His body was engulfed in flames like a moth flying into a flame. Bit by bit, he was burned to ashes by the seven-colored flames. The dignified third barbaric ancestor had died under the seven-colored arrow. At the moment when the third ancestor died, the women who were in a petrified state began to undo their petrification. Third ancestor is dead. She was actually killed by this brat with a single arrow. The fifth ancestor was shocked. Both of his heads bit the tip of his tongue at the same time, spurting out blood essence to activate his divine ability. Immediately, a fiery cloud appeared beneath his feet. Stepping on the fiery cloud, the fifth ancestor's speed increased tremendously. He did not dare to fight Ningfan at all. After witnessing the death of the third ancestor with his own eyes, he already had a deep fear towards the seven-colored arrow. The seven-colored arrow contained the chi of samsara power and the power to reverse karma. With his current strength, he would not be able to withstand the destructive power of the seven-colored arrow. He tried his best to escape. However, when Ningfan drew the bowstring and knocked the second seven-colored arrow, his heart immediately sank into despair. At this moment, he had clearly distanced himself from Ningfan. However, this distance could not be separated by karma. As long as Ningfan draws the bowstring, he would suffer the karma of being injured and the karma of being struck by the arrow. This karma was unavoidable and unavoidable. At this moment, when he was in a desperate situation, the fifth ancestor's senses became thousands of times sharper than usual. He gradually sensed a trace of extremely well-hidden baleful chi from Ningfan's body. That baleful chi was obviously accumulated when he killed the sixth ancestor, Fan Lianxiu. Who exactly is this brat? He killed the third ancestor with just a single arrow. Before that, he even killed the sixth ancestor. The fifth ancestor was greatly shocked. He desperately tried to escape. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain on his back and a bloody hole the size of a fist appeared. At this moment, Ningfan had already drawn the bowstring. At this moment, the fifth ancestor's back was instantly wounded. At the next moment, the seven-colored arrow pierced through the sky and pierced through the wound on the fifth ancestor's back. The reason why the arrow pierced through his body was because it directly shot the fifth ancestor down from the fiery cloud. At the moment when he fell from the sky, the fifth ancestor's body was engulfed in seven-colored flames. Within the raging flames, the fifth ancestor was burned into ashes bit by bit. In an instant, only two heads were left that had yet to turn into ashes. In the face of certain death, the fifth ancestor's eyes flashed with determination. He suddenly muttered an incantation and self-detonated the crying head among the two heads. As the head self-detonated, an extremely weak blood soul suddenly flew out from the other head. Without saying a word, it fled for its life. The fifth ancestor was more proficient in escaping techniques compared to the third ancestor. That was why a blood soul could escape from the seven-colored arrow's injury. Seeing that the fifth ancestor's blood soul was trying to escape, Ningfan's eyes flashed with mockery. Golden light shone under his feet and his speed was slightly faster than the fifth ancestor. With just a leap, he directly crossed an immeasurable distance and appeared in front of the fifth ancestor. The 5 fingers of his right hand reached out and grabbed the fifth ancestor's blood soul. With another leap, he returned to the sky above the broken continent again. Say, "Sir, please have mercy. This old man knows a huge secret, and it will definitely be of great benefit to you. As long as you swear the great oath of Heart Devil and let me go, I'm willing to tell you this secret. Do you know the 9 Heavens Imperial Court?" After being captured by Ningfan, the fifth ancestor's face was filled with fear. He gritted his teeth as if he wanted to tell Ningfan some secret to save his life. In reality, however, the fifth ancestor was just trying to buy time with his words. Secretly, he was accumulating his remaining magic power to prepare some kind of escape ability. As long as Ning Fan listened to him and bought him some time, he would be able to display his ability and escape from Ning Fan's evil hands. Ning Fan had experienced a few life and death situations throughout his path of cultivation. Although he might not be as intelligent as a demon, he was also quite shrewd. From the fifth ancestor's expression, Ning Fan could see a trace of scheming and calculation. He had already vaguely guessed that the fifth ancestor's purpose of telling him these things was to buy time to escape. Ning Fan was not interested in the secret that the fifth ancestor was talking about. He also did not plan to give the fifth ancestor a chance to escape. He did not search the fifth ancestor's memories. Even if the fifth ancestor's blood soul was weak, his cultivation base was still heaven-defying when he was at his peak. Ning Fan could not search his memories. He simply activated the west wind technique. Immediately, waves of chilling autumn intent appeared on his palm. This technique was enough to easily kill the fifth ancestor who was in his blood soul form. Seeing that Ning Fan was determined to kill him without giving him any time to tell him the secret, the fifth ancestor knew that there was no hope for him to escape. His eyes were filled with hatred. "Since you want to kill me, I won't let you have an easy time." Barbarian God Bones Sacrificial Technique. With my barbarian blood, bones, and life, I will create a barbarian talisman to imprison and kill this brat. I'm going to fight you to the death. Explode. 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 The fifth ancestor's eyes were filled with madness. All of a sudden, his body erupted with red light that soared into the sky. The red light was too ferocious. The moment Ning Fan saw it, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. His eyes widened. Without saying anything, he directly sent the fifth ancestor's blood soul away and retreated. However, it was already too late. At this moment, the fifth ancestor's body was covered in red light that was as dazzling as the sun. His blood soul expanded little by little and then, it exploded. Compared to dying in Ning Fan's hands, the fifth ancestor chose to self-destruct. This self-destruction was not an ordinary self-destruction but an extremely terrifying barbarian technique. To barbarians, this technique was both an opportunity and a danger. However, to non-barbarian cultivators of foreign races, it was undoubtedly dangerous. The blood light that the fifth ancestor self-destructed turned into an ancient barbarian talisman. It pierced through the sky like a blood-red rainbow and went straight towards Ning Fan. The blood talisman was too fast. In just a flash, it had traveled across a vast distance and shot into Ning Fan's body. All of a sudden, a black-red barbarian mark appeared on the left side of Ning Fan's face. At the moment when this mark appeared, Ning Fan suddenly coughed out a mouthful of black blood and his eyes widened in shock. At the same time, the 200,000 wild beasts on the broken continent gave Ning Fan a monstrous killing intent. Even the blood seal in Ning Fan's body could not suppress that killing intent. For some unknown reason, these wild beasts suddenly became determined to kill Ning Fan. This is the barbarian summoning technique. Ning Fan's eyes darkened. He had seen this technique in the ancient books of the barbarians. The barbarians had a total of 7 kinds of lost abilities. It could awaken the young barbarian lord from thousands of barbarians. This technique was the most ferocious one. To non-barbarian cultivators, this technique was extremely destructive. It's definitely not a fortuitous encounter. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.